Chapter 1. Heaven-Devouring Divine Emperor. A Red Leaf. This book is produced and distributed electronically by Sweet Potato Network. All rights reserved. Infringement must be investigated. Chapter 1. Devil's Contract. Primitive Land, Sin City, Chin family. You're a piece of trash, and now your sister is also a piece of trash. You're really not a family. Kid, next time you see us, you have to greet us respectfully. Otherwise, we'll beat you up every time we see you. Your genius sister has already become a piece of trash. Do you think she can still take care of you? A few well-dressed youths kicked the boy lying on the ground a few more times before leaving. Chin Feng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at them deeply. He got up, patted the dust off his body, and walked towards his room. Xiao Feng, did you fight with them again? Just as he entered the courtyard, a soft voice came from behind him. Chin Feng raised his head and looked at the girl standing at the bottom of the stairs. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. Her appearance was stunning, but her face was abnormally red. Sister. Chin Feng smiled. Xiao Feng, I've said it before. Don't fight with them. You've always been calm and collected. Why are you so easily angered now? Looking at Chin Feng, Qin Yao sighed. I don't care what they say about me, but I won't allow them to insult my sister. Chin Feng said. Qin Yao's face froze, and then she shook her head helplessly. Their mouths are on their bodies. Let them say whatever they want. Besides, I've really let down the family's nurturing. Sister is a meritorious servant of the family. Chin Feng clenched his fist and said angrily. Hearing this, Qin Yao shook her head again and said with a bitter smile, Meritorious servant? If I could bring the family into the top 3 clans, then I would be the real meritorious servant. But now that I've been crippled, I don't have the chance anymore. If you care about people who are not related to you, then you've lost. Seeing that Chin Feng was about to refute, Qin Yao shook her head and said, Little Feng, remember, in this world where the fist speaks, those who are not strong enough have no right to speak. Looking at Qin Yao's delicate back, Chin Feng felt very uncomfortable. His older sister, Qin Yao, was a rare genius in the Qin family. She could even be said to be a genius in the entire city of Sin. Her appearance had shocked the entire city. But then, in the city of Sin, they were born as sinners, and the blood of sinners flowed in their veins. The only way was to spread their wings and soar into the sky, fight for a future, and enter the top 10 families. Otherwise, they would only be enslaved. The Qin family was currently ranked at the bottom of the top 10, and they had not entered the top 10 for 2 consecutive years. If they still could not enter the top 10 this time, then the Qin family would be removed from the top 10 families. When that happens, the Qin family would be reduced to a slave family. Everyone in the family would be enslaved and enslaved. The Qin family's development in the past few years had been declining, but a genius like Qin Yao had appeared. At such a young age, she had displayed shocking talent. When she grew up, she was even more shocking. She had opened 9 meridians before the age of 18, becoming the 3rd person in the history of the city of Sin to open 9 meridians before reaching adulthood. Her appearance was enough to threaten the unchanging top 3 families. Every family was envious of her. Even the Yin family, one of the top 3 families, sent people to contact the Qin family, wanting to form a marriage alliance. The marriage partner was the number 1 genius of the Yin family, Cloudy Days. The Qin family was naturally overjoyed to have a marriage alliance with the Yin family. Cloudy Days and Qin Yao were called the Golden Couple, a perfect match made in heaven. However, during one of their travels, Cloudy Days teamed up with a group of powerhouses and severely injured Qin Yao. Her meridians were broken, and she became a cripple. The reason he gave to the world was that Qin Yao had an affair with another man and was no longer pure. She even teamed up with that man to get rid of him. Whether or not it was true, no one cared. Because no one would offend the powerful Cloudy Days for a crippled Qin Yao. Just like that, Qin Yao turned from an otherworldly fairy into a lustful woman that everyone despised, bearing the crime of being unchaste and unclean. Because of Qin Yao, the Qin family could have become one of the top 3 families. However, overnight they were beaten back to their original state. At that time, it was less than a month before the City of Sin's top 10 competition. As his thoughts gradually returned, Qin Feng's eyes burned with hatred. Who didn't know that among the younger generation, Qin Yao was too powerful? She could even threaten the top 3 disciples. The marriage alliance between the Yin family and the Qin family was just a pretense. The real reason was to use this opportunity to attack Qin Yao. Because once Qin Yao was eliminated, the Yin family's position as the 3rd strongest family would be preserved. Sister, rest well. Qin Feng smiled. After he turned around, the smile on his face was immediately filled with dense killing intent. His eyes were surging with a monstrous hatred. Cloudy days, in the top 10 competition half a month from now, Qin Feng, will definitely kill you. After returning to his room, Qin Feng hesitated for a moment before he finally made up his mind. Old devil, come out! As soon as he finished speaking, a cold laugh came from his right palm. Then, an eye flew out. It was as black as ink and the eyeball was blood red. There was also an endless amount of dark demonic energy surging around it. Looking at this eye, Qin Feng was so angry that his entire body trembled. He clenched his fist. His sister was a genius. As her brother, how could he be any worse? However, when he stepped onto the path of cultivation, this eye suddenly appeared in his palm. Since then, 80% of the spiritual energy he absorbed from the heaven and earth was absorbed by this eye. This caused his cultivation to progress very slowly. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and stared at the eye. He said, I will sign a devil's contract with you, but you must return all the spiritual energy I have accumulated over the years to me. That's not a problem. Plus, I can make you stronger. The demonic eye laughed coldly. Chi. The demonic eye shot out beams of black light that pierced Qin Feng's body. This black light was like liquid, full of cold and evil power. The black light wandered around Qin Feng's body. The beams of light intertwined with each other and seemed to form some kind of seal. In the center of the seal, there was an unusually dense black light wriggling. If you sign a devil's contract, your body will be mine after 3 years. Have you thought it through? The demonic eye said. For 3 years, I will still be me. Qin Feng replied coldly with a mocking smile. Why? Haven't you been persuading me to sign a contract with you? Why are you so naggy now? The demonic eye laughed and said, Open your spiritual veins. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He opened his 3 spiritual veins. Boom! In an instant, the dense black light drilled into his spiritual veins and dyed all his spiritual energy black. It roared and drilled everywhere. At the same time, the spiritual veins that were only as thick as a pinky suddenly expanded to the size of 2 fingers. Black spiritual energy surged inside. In a short period of time, Qin Feng's cultivation soared. Half an hour later, Qin Feng opened his 4th spiritual vein. An hour later, his 5th spiritual vein was opened. That night, the demonic qi in the room roared and raged. It was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. The insects and butterflies trembled. That night was the most painful and darkest night of Qin Feng's life. The entire courtyard was filled with his painful roars. The next morning, when the light shone through the cracks in the window, Qin Feng's pain ended. He opened his eyes and clenched his fists. He felt the powerful energy in his body and was in a daze. He had opened 3 spiritual veins in one night and jumped from 3 to 6. This was something he never dared to imagine before. This kind of power intoxicated him. Cloudy days, do you think you can keep your Yin family's position as the 3rd strongest clan after scheming against my sister? This time, not only will I knock your Yin family out of the top 3, but I will also take your dog life. Chapter 2. After Qin Feng adjusted his breathing, He changed his clothes and walked towards the Qin family's main hall. The Qin family was destined to lose their title as one of the top 10 families, so they were discussing whether to accept the Su family's proposal to merge with the 6th strongest family. Once the Qin family was merged with the Su family, they would be able to escape the fate of being enslaved, but they would no longer have the chance to fight for the top 10 in the surface competition. Because of the merger, the city of Sin would no longer have the Qin family. Qin Feng didn't know how the discussion went, but he wanted to stop it. "Yo, isn't this Qin Feng brat? Come over here and kowtow to this grandpa." Just as he turned the corner, a cold laugh suddenly sounded. Qin Feng stopped in his tracks and stared at a few youths walking over from afar. The one leading them was the one who beat him up yesterday. Qin and Qin Feng loathed this person. In the past, because of Qin Yao, this person was respectful in front of him and was a complete follower. But after Qin Yao was crippled, his brother Qin Ji was promoted from the 2nd tier to the 1st tier. Furthermore, the Qin family shifted their hopes from Qin Ji to Qin Yao. Due to his brother's influence, his status naturally rose as well. He had also revealed his original ugly face, humiliated him, and made things difficult for him many times. Qin Feng stared at him indifferently. Now that his strength had greatly increased, he didn't put Qinen, who was only 5 meridians, in his eyes. "I told you to come over and kowtow, didn't you hear me?" Qinen ordered as he stared at Qin Feng and sneered. "You think that trash sister of yours is a genius? You're just not used to your status? You better not insult my sister." Qin Feng glanced at him and said indifferently, "Am I wrong? The family used all their resources to nurture her, but she was too disappointing and let the family's many years of hard work go to waste. She is the sinner of the family." Qin shrugged his shoulders, looking like a villain intoxicated by success. "So I insulted her. What can a piece of trash like you do to me?" Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. He didn't want to say anything to such a person. Her sister had brought glory and hope to the family, and they thought that it was only right. But once this glory and hope were gone, they would pour all the blame and dirty water on her. This was the bad habit of humans. Their family was in a crisis, yet they didn't think of a way to help. Instead, they were here to humiliate the people of their own family. Qin Feng hated this kind of people who were dogs outside and tigers inside. "You'd better shut your dog mouth," Qin Feng said coldly. Qin sneered. He pointed at Qin Feng and said to the people around him with a smile, "Did you see that? This brat still hasn't gotten used to his identity. Today, I'll teach him a lesson and let him know how to behave." As he said that, Qin suddenly rushed over and stretched out a hand, reaching for Qin Feng's throat. His hand was surrounded by spiritual power and had an oppressive aura. He grabbed at Qin Feng's neck, wanting to directly drag him over and humiliate him. Bang! However, the development of the situation was out of his expectations. Qin Feng casually blocked his hand to the side. Qin An's pupils constricted. He saw a hand enlarging in front of his eyes. It was so fast that he didn't have time to react. He was grabbed by the neck and lifted up. "You!" He was stunned and incomparably shocked. Qin Feng, who he wanted to grab, actually grabbed his neck instead. Like pulling a little chick, Qin Feng grabbed him up. With a bang, Qin Feng slammed him to the ground. However, he didn't use any strength. Otherwise, Qin would have been injured or broken bones even if he didn't die. Even so, Qin didn't feel good. He was thrown until he was dizzy. All the bones in his body felt like they were falling apart. He was in so much pain that he cried out. "A dog will always be a dog. Don't think that you can become the owner." Qin Feng stepped on his chest and looked down at him with cold eyes. He said, "Remember, if I hear you say anything bad about my sister again, I will break your neck." Although his voice was soft, it was almost tangible and filled with coldness. Qin couldn't help but shiver. especially that pair of cold and emotionless dark eyes, which frightened him. He had no doubt that if he refuted in the slightest, Qin Feng would definitely kill him. Qin nodded with trepidation. Very good. Qin Feng retracted his foot and walked forward, leaving this place. The group of lackeys that Qin and brought hurriedly separated and shrank to the side. They were so scared that they didn't dare to raise their heads. Qin stared blankly at Qin Feng's back. He couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. He muttered in a trembling voice, "When did Qin Feng become so scary? What a joke! Qin Xia and Qin Ji alone can't enter the top 10. I suggest that we agree to the merger of the Su family. At least they won't be enslaved. It's also a way to survive. How can we know whether we can enter the top 10 if we don't try? If the Su family merges, the Qin family will never have a chance to rise again. Grand Elder, you are gambling with the entire Qin family, and the odds of winning are very low. Do you know what will happen to the Qin family if they can't enter the top 10? When Qin Feng arrived at the Qin family hall, he heard such quarrels. He frowned, pushed open the door, walked in, and said loudly, "I don't agree with the merger." A group of people turned to look at him, their faces full of astonishment. "Qin Feng, this is no place for you to speak. We have our own plans for how to decide," an old man scolded. Qin Feng sneered and said, "Being merged with the Su family and becoming a dog of the Su family. Is this the plan of the third elder? You!" The third elder glared at him and shouted, "A bastard like you doesn't have the right to speak here. Get out of here." In the hall, Qin Zhen and Qin Feng's faces changed at the same time and became gloomy. Qin Feng was not the son of Qin Zhen and the mistress of the Qin family, but of a mistress. As for Qin Feng's birth mother, it had always been a mystery. Even his father, Qin Zhen, kept it a secret. Therefore, outsiders guessed that Qin Feng must be the son of Qin Zhen and a prostitute in a brothel. Therefore, Qin Zhen didn't dare to disclose Qin Feng's birth mother to the public. This had always been Qin Feng's mystery and also his pain. He hated it when people called him a bastard. Of course, this was also because Qin Yao was disabled and Qin Zhen's position as the clan leader was affected. If this was before, who would dare to insult him like this? "Third elder, watch your tone," Qin Zhen said in a low voice, and his face was stern. The third elder knew that he had spoken too harshly. He hissed and turned his head, pretending he didn't hear anything. "Qin Feng, do you know the situation the clan is facing?" Just then, the Grand Elder spoke. He stared at Qin Feng and said, "You don't agree with the merger. What right do you have to make us consider your opinion?" Qin Feng puffed out his chest and said softly, "Because I am the number 1 underage in the city of Sin?" "Haha, number 1 underage in the city of Sin? Qin Feng, have you lost your mind? Even in the Qin family you are the worst. How dare you talk about the entire city of Sin? I feel embarrassed for your father." The third elder snickered. "How would you know if you don't try?" Qin Feng's tone was calm. "Third elder, don't be so full of yourself. Be careful not to get slapped in the face." "Oomph!" The third elder hissed and looked at a middle-aged man in the middle of the hall. "Second elder Qin, someone is challenging Qin Changming's position. What do you say?" Chapter 3. Soon, a 16-year-old boy entered the room. As soon as he entered, he shouted for Qin Feng to roll over and die. It was clear that his arrogance and domineering attitude was not something new. Qin Changming was only 16 years old, but he had already opened 6 spiritual veins. This level of talent was considered to be above average. One must know that Qin Yao had only opened 7 spiritual veins when she was 16. In other words, those who could open 6 spiritual veins before the age of 18 were considered to be very talented. Qin Changming's achievements at 16 years old were greater than most 17-year-olds. Moreover, he was the only son of the second master. It was inevitable for him to be arrogant. "Come, you little bastard, get your ass over here." After seeing Qin Feng, Qin Changming pointed at him with a look of disdain. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the group of elders of the Qin clan and said softly, "If I defeat Qin Changming, I don't know if my proposal of not agreeing to the merger will pass. You think you're worthy?" The third elder sneered, thinking that Qin Feng's brain must have been clamped by an iron door. "Wait until you can withstand 3 moves from my son," Qin Zhong coldly said. 3 moves? Qin Changming shook his head and mocked. "To deal with this trash, 1 move is enough." After he finished speaking, he took a big step forward and directly reached out to grab Qin Feng's collar. Qin Feng sidestepped and dodged. His feet slipped, and he retreated 2 to 3 meters. Qin Changming was slightly surprised, but he immediately sneered. His attack speed and strength suddenly increased, but it did not have much effect. Qin Feng easily dodged his attack. After retreating a few meters, Qin Feng stood still and said, 3 moves have passed. That was just a warm-up. Now the real fight begins. Qin Changming angrily shouted. He felt that his dignity was being challenged. He was the number 1 miner in the Qin family, but he did not immediately catch this trash. This made him furious. "Devil Flood Dragon Fist," Qin Changming shouted, and the energy on his fist surged. This time, Qin Feng did not dodge. He also used the Devil Flood Dragon Fist to meet Qin Changming's attack. Following a muffled sound, the two of them simultaneously took a few steps back. Looking at the two who were evenly matched, the Qin family members in the hall were all stunned. What kind of situation was this? Qin Feng was actually able to fight with Qin Changming without being defeated? A glint flashed across the eyes of Qin Zhen and the Grand Elder. The two of them looked at each other and secretly nodded. In the field, Qin Changming looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. The burning pain coming from his fist made him extremely shocked. Qin Feng had only opened 3 meridians. When did he open 6 meridians? Moreover, his spiritual power was not any weaker than his. In fact, it was even stronger. In the previous exchange, he felt as if he had hit a hard rock. He took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and circulated the spirit energy in his body. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. Although Qin Changming was arrogant and overbearing, he did have some capital. The two of them clashed once again. Their spiritual power erupted and their strength surged. It was a different kind of momentum. The Qin family members inwardly nodded. Although the two of them were young and used too many useless moves, it was still not easy for them to achieve this kind of success. However, many people were puzzled. It was normal for Qin Changming to have this kind of strength. When did Qin Feng become so powerful? Even Qin Zhen was confused. He could not see through this son of his. During the battle, Qin Feng gradually frowned because he could not take down Qin Changming. "Idiot, if all battle skills were used like you, then there would be no geniuses in the world." The demon eye's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind, shaking his spirit. "Old demon, what kind of move do you have? Same level, same age, same level, yet you still need my help. Even if I get your body in 3 years, what use will it be? Remember, the reason why combat skills are called combat skills is because they are tempered through actual combat time and time again," the demon eye said in disappointment. "Don't be too rigid when using battle skills. Learn to use them at the right time and in the right place. Different opponents, different environments. Learn to adapt. You only know how to use the body-changing steps to dodge, then use the Devil Flood Dragon Fist to attack. Why don't you think about using some tricks to confuse the opponent, then use the body-changing steps to close in, and finally use the Devil Flood Dragon Fist to attack? Only stupid people would fight by the book." Qin Feng's face was blank, but he seemed to understand. He nodded and no longer faced Qin Changming head-on. He feinted a few times, then suddenly used the body-changing steps to appear behind Qin Changming, and used the Devil Flood Dragon Fist. Qin Changming's face changed greatly, and he quickly mobilized his spiritual power to defend. Boom! Qin Feng blasted out a fist, and the wind was vast and mighty. Qin Changming hastily defended, but he was shaken and staggered forward. The sudden change in the situation startled everyone. They felt that it was inconceivable. Qin Feng actually held the upper hand? Only a few astute people showed admiration. With one successful strike, Qin Feng secretly admired Mo Yan's old Taoist. At the same time, he understood that his battle skills were sublimated. He was no longer rigid but full of spirituality. After several exchanges, Qin Feng was confident that he could defeat Qin Changming, but he did not do so. He was tempering himself, accumulating battle experience and skills. In the hall, Qin Feng moved left and right. His fists were sometimes light and sometimes heavy, and the direction of his attacks were erratic. Qin Changming roared, his lungs about to explode. He had never felt so humiliated. Qin Feng, who was on par with him, seemed to have suddenly changed into a different person. He could not adapt for a while. Like him, the Qin family felt that Qin Feng's rapid growth in battle was unbelievable. It was as if he had suddenly changed from a rookie to a seasoned veteran. If he had not deliberately hidden this before, then it was a little scary. Finally, Qin Feng felt that Qin Changming was no longer a threat to him. He used the body-changing steps 3 times in a row, and finally used the Devil Flood Dragon Fist to send Qin Changming flying. Slowly moving down his fist, Qin Feng said indifferently, "You've lost." Qin Changming lay on the ground, his face pale. He glared at Qin Feng, but in the end, he fainted from anger. The hall was silent. One by one, they stared at Qin Feng with a strange look. "Qin Feng, when did you become so strong?" one of the higher-ups asked with a questioning tone. "I have never thought of myself as trash. It's just that you have been focusing on my sister and not me." Qin Feng said indifferently, "Now that my sister has fallen, I will stand up and continue my sister's glory. In a week, I will participate in the City of Sin's underage division. If I win, I will participate in the Surface's top 10 competition. The Qin family is a human, not a dog. Even in a desperate situation, one should have pride and determination to never give up." Good. Even in a desperate situation, never give up. You are indeed my son." Qin Zhen laughed uproariously as he stared at Qin Feng. His eyes were slightly moist. At this moment, he seemed to see himself back then in Qin Feng. Looking at the Grand Elder and seeing him nod, Qin Zhen let out a sigh of relief. In the Qin family, as long as he and the Grand Elder had the same opinion, then everything was settled. Chapter 4. Spirit liquid boiling body. Coming out of the conference hall, Qin Feng's face was gloomy. Although he defeated Qin Changming, he didn't feel any joy because his goal was Cloudy Days, not this second-generation young master. Within the same stage, he couldn't even defeat anyone, so how could he challenge Cloudy Days? The top 10 competition will begin in half a month, so he must quickly increase his strength. Qin Feng felt a great sense of urgency. "Old devil, is there any way for me to quickly increase my strength? Boy, you must know that on the road of cultivation, you must have a balance between tension and relaxation. Excessive pursuit of speed will easily lead to an unstable foundation." The demon I said, "Although your foundation is very solid these past few years, it can't withstand an unrestrained increase. But I don't have time. In the top 10 competition, I must defeat Cloudy Days." Qin Feng said. The demon I was silent for a moment, then said, "It's not that there is no way, but the process may be very painful." "What way?" Qin Feng's eyes lit up. After a moment of silence, the demon I said, "Help me prepare foundation building liquid, spirit melting grass, 100-year black ginseng, yellow earth water." Hearing the old monster talking about all kinds of medicinal ingredients, Qin Feng was stunned. Where would he go to get so many medicinal ingredients? The amount of gold coins he would have to spend was an astronomical figure, but he knew that this was his last chance. No matter how difficult it was, he must find a way to overcome it. Sister, these 2 years you should have accumulated some wealth, so this is the only way. When Qin Feng said his request, Qin Yao didn't hesitate and took out all her wealth, even taking out some jewelry. These things should be able to sell for a lot of money. Looking at the pile of gold and silver on the table, Qin Feng asked, Sister, why don't you ask me why I need so much money? Do we need to talk about these things between us? Qin Yao gently looked at Qin Feng and said with a smile, You must have your reasons for wanting this money, and sister can only give you this much support. Qin Feng's eyes were slightly moist. He took a deep breath and swallowed back his tears. He put away the gold and silver and walked out. Using Qin Yao's belongings, Qin Feng managed to gather all the herbs he needed for the magic eye. In the dead of the night, Qin Feng placed the items on the table and said, Everything is ready. Buzz. His palm trembled and the demonic qi rolled. A pitch-black eye floated up and down in the demonic qi, and a wisp of dark flame darted out, rolling up the herbs and burning them. Under the intense burning, the 100-year-old black ginseng, spirit-dissolving grass, bamboo orchid, and other medicinal herbs all turned into liquid and began to fuse. Qin Feng was shaken in his heart. This old devil was actually a spirit alchemist, too inconceivable. In this world, spirit apothecaries were an extremely rare profession. The spirit liquids and medicinal pills they refined were simply spirit pills and miraculous medicines to cultivators. Because of this, alchemists had an extremely high status. Even the lowest-leveled alchemists were treated as guests of honor in the city of Sin. As far as he knew, there was only one first-rank spirit apothecary in the entire city of Sin. His status was as high as the patriarchs of the 3 major clans. The entire process didn't take long. Very quickly, a large amount of dark green liquid was refined. Qin Feng quickly took out the prepared jade bottles and put them away in batches. This is broken blood bone molding liquid. It is used to mold your body. The old devil said, in terms of strength, it is not good to increase it in a short period of time. The only way is to increase the strength of your body. How do I use this? Qin Feng asked. Take a basin of water and pour in the usual amount. You only need to pour in 1/3 of the broken blood bone molding liquid, but considering time is tight, use half. The old devil said. Half? Qin Feng was stunned. Looking at the jade bottles on the table, the corner of his eyes twitched. You refined a total of 5 bottles, and I can only use it 10 times. He spent an astronomical amount of money, and his annual allowance wasn't that much. Only 10 times? This was too much of a scam. Do you think this is some cabbage you can find on the street? Let me tell you, this is only the beginning. In the future, the demand will gradually increase. Otherwise, how would you cultivate that method? The old devil sneered. That method? Qin Feng was surprised and asked, What method? Don't ask too much. When your body is tough enough, you will naturally know. Qin Feng nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He took out a basin of water and poured in half. Immediately, the clear water turned dark green. He took off his clothes and sat down in the basin. In an instant, a cool and refreshing feeling invaded his body. But immediately after, his expression changed. An unspeakable pain attacked him. It started from the surface of his body and gradually seeped into his body. Endure it. The amount used is a bit too much. Pain is inevitable. Qin Feng was about to jump out when the old devil's voice came. If you can't even endure this little bit of pain, then there is no need to continue. Hearing this, Qin Feng was silent for a while, then sat back down. Seeing this, the demon eye said, If you want to obtain power that surpasses ordinary people, then you have to put in more effort and sweat than others. Qin Feng didn't speak anymore. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, enduring the pain from the outside to the inside. Even with his temperament, in the end, his face twisted and he couldn't help but growl. After a full half an hour, the color of the water in the basin faded a lot, and the pain was also alleviated. When the pain gradually subsided, Qin Feng could feel that his body was relaxed. There was a layer of sticky substance on the surface of his body. It was the impurities in his body that had been removed. Clenching his fists, Qin Feng felt that his physical strength had improved a lot. He was gratified. Old devil, I have already adapted to this pain. I think I can use the remaining half of the bottle. Feeling comfortable, Qin Feng couldn't help but say, "Do you think the amount of pain you use will bring?" The demon eye sneered and said, "The magic of the broken blood bone molding liquid is that the pain it produces is stacked. As your body grows stronger, the pain will continue to increase. Of course, if you can persevere, the benefits are self-evident." Qin Feng's face twitched. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and poured the remaining half of the bottle into the basin. Immediately, he couldn't help but roar. His flesh and blood seemed to be minced, and his bones seemed to be broken layer by layer. The pain nibbled away at his almost broken nerve. It was difficult to understand unless one experienced it personally. Qin Feng almost fainted several times, but he gritted his teeth and held on. But even so, he entered a semi-drowsy state, and his consciousness was fuzzy. Little Feng, in a daze, Qin Feng heard an anxious call. He struggled to open his eyes. In his distorted vision, he saw a scene. Cloudy Days ruthlessly punched Qin Yao in the chest, and then stepped on her body with a gloomy and complacent expression. Qin Yao kept coughing up blood, weakly calling his name. "Sister," Qin Feng softly said, and suddenly woke up. His body suddenly tightened, and an invisible wave of air spread out, directly shattering the wooden basin. Wood chips and water splashed all over the sky. Chapter 5. 100 Calamity Swallowing Heaven Technique. In the room, Qin Feng clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were bloodshot, and a murderous aura emanated from his body, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. Was this how my sister was crippled at that time? Humiliated by him? Qin Feng's voice was heavy and hoarse, filled with endless murderous intent. "It seems that person has a great influence on you," the demon eye said. "I will kill him," Qin Feng said without hiding anything. "Ambitious, but it will be very difficult." "It will be difficult, but I will do it." After getting some water, Qin Feng washed his body and put on his clothes. He began to examine his body and found that it was much tougher than before. He felt that there was an explosive power hidden in his body, as if it could split mountains. Now, he was confident that he could beat Qin Changming without any trick. He was confident that he could beat him down with just the strength of his body. The improvement in the initial stage is obvious, but it will be more difficult as you progress, the demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded. Physical strength was not the same as spiritual power. If one wanted to improve physical strength, they had to constantly surpass their original limit. Through each breakthrough, they would continue to strengthen themselves. He had used a whole bottle of broken blood bone molding liquid and endured unbearable torment. Once he relaxed, exhaustion and weakness would overtake him. At this time, Qin Feng just wanted to lie on the bed and have a good sleep. He felt that every part of his body was aching. The more difficult it is, the more you should persevere. Cultivating in this state has many benefits, the demon eye said lightly. Don't tell me that I don't have to sleep and rest? Qin Feng rolled his eyes, not wanting to move at all. At this level, it will not affect you if you don't rest for a few days. Moreover, cultivating will only make you more energetic. The demon eye paused and said, "What do you think Cloudy Days is doing at this time? Sleeping? Diligently cultivating?" Qin Feng's eyes suddenly opened. The exhaustion in his eyes suddenly disappeared. He sat up with difficulty and entered into a state of cultivation. The demon eye was right. If cloudy days rested, he would also rest. If cloudy days cultivated, he would also cultivate. Let alone surpass, he would not even be able to catch up. I don't have that much time. With the continuous flow of spiritual power into his body, Qin Feng's spirit recovered a lot. His face also recovered. The next morning, after a night of cultivation, Qin Feng was not tired at all. Instead, he was full of energy. The demon eye is right. I wasted too much time. Sighing lightly, Qin Feng got up from the bed. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "Old devil, do you have any powerful battle skills?" In the clan, there were only a few battle skills, and their power was not much. Mo Yen was a spiritual apothecary, so he must have a rich collection. "Brat, you've already set your sights on me so quickly." The demon eye said indifferently. After a moment of silence he said, "I can teach you one thing, but I don't know if you dare to accept it." Qin Feng was stunned. He could not help but be more interested. He asked, "What is it?" "100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art." Qin Feng was shocked. What a domineering name. What is its power? It can let you devour everything. Spiritual power, blood, and all kinds of energy in the world. The demon eye said indifferently. Qin Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. What a domineering technique. It could devour everything. It was simply invincible. But from the demon eye's tone, it was not just that. Qin Feng asked, "There are certain conditions or some side effects?" The demon eye secretly praised him and said, "Once you start cultivating the 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art, you cannot stop halfway. Otherwise, you will be punished by the heavens and die. And once you cultivate it, unless you achieve great success, the heavenly tribulation will not stop. To be able to devour the power of others is a heaven-defying act. Therefore, you will be punished by the heavens. Every time you cultivate to a certain level, the heavenly tribulation will descend. 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art. You will experience 100 heavenly tribulations. 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art. In other words, once you cultivate the 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art, if you do not succeed, you will die. This is a path of no return and no stopping. Boy, whether you want to cultivate it or not, you should think carefully." The demon eye said. Qin Feng fell into deep shock. This kind of consequence was too terrifying. If he did not succeed, he would die. His 10 fingers were tightly clenched together. His expression was gloomy. After a long while, Qin Feng let out a deep breath and asked, "Can cultivating it let me walk on the path of invincibility?" There is no invincible technique in this world. There is also no invincible person. There is only an invincible heart. The demon eye said in a low voice, "Perhaps you will use this to create a brilliant path. Or perhaps you will die in the calamity. The key is you." Qin Feng was shocked. After a long silence, his tightly knitted eyebrows relaxed. He smiled and said, "I want to cultivate the 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Qin Feng nodded. The demon eye vibrated. A dense black light erupted from its palm and entered Qin Feng's mind. In an instant, an extremely obscure circulation method formed in his mind. Qin Feng hurriedly circulated it. But soon, he frowned. "Why don't I feel the power of devouring? TSK. How can it be that easy? It needs to be stimulated. How do I stimulate it?" "You will know in a while." Spirit Beast Mountain Range. Did you bring me here to fight with spirit beasts and accumulate combat experience? Qin Feng asked. That is only secondary. The demon eye shook its head and said, "The 100 Calamity Sky Swallowing Art is not a rigid cultivation. It is a comprehension. If you cannot comprehend it, you will not be able to cultivate it." As it spoke, A demonic aura swept Qin Feng up and threw him into a pitch-black cave. Immediately, the roars of beasts were heard. F***ck, old thing. Qin Feng's angry curses came from inside. Then, there were continuous banging sounds. 10 minutes later, Qin Feng walked out with blood all over his body. Did you comprehend it? The demon eye asked. You don't tell me anything. How can I comprehend it? Qin Feng cursed. Then let's go somewhere else. An hour later, Qin Feng climbed out of a pile of spirit beast corpses. Can you devour the blood of spirit beasts? You should at least tell me the direction. Then let's continue. Just like that, for an entire day, Qin Feng was forced to fight spirit beasts without rest. Even when his spirit energy was exhausted, the demon eye was not moved at all. In the beginning, Qin Feng was very angry, but later on, he became more active because he could feel that after his spirit energy was exhausted again and again, the speed of absorbing heaven and earth spirit energy became faster and faster. Moreover, his physical body was tempered and became more tenacious. In each life and death training, his combat experience and skills increased sharply. Even the demon eye sighed. The most important thing was that he did not improve, but his combat skills increased by a lot. In the end, Qin Feng gradually understood and seemed to have comprehended something, but it was very vague and difficult to grasp. When he killed a late-stage first-order spirit beast that was comparable to a 7-meridian cultivator, Qin Feng finally knew what the demon eye wanted him to comprehend. The heaven-swallowing art. Without my invincible heaven-swallowing qi, how can I swallow the heavens? Chapter 6. The selection begins. Qin Feng finally comprehended the profound meaning of the 100 calamity heaven-swallowing art and successfully swallowed a spirit beast's blood qi. After meditating for half an hour, Qin Feng stood up after the swallowed blood qi was completely transformed into his own spirit energy. He had a gratified smile on his face and his whole body felt comfortable, as if he had eaten a full meal. Moreover, his spirit energy had increased a lot. Part of the spirit beast's blood qi had also been transformed into natural energy to temper his body. After tasting the benefits, Qin Feng was not tired. He looked for spirit beasts in the mountains, killed them, and swallowed their blood qi. Only after he had swallowed 5 spirit beasts did he feel bloated. Under the reminder of the demonic eye, he did not dare to continue. Although the 100 calamity heaven-swallowing art could swallow everything, there was a certain limit to the amount of energy it could swallow according to one's strength, capacity, and proficiency. If he blindly swallowed, he would only explode. After spending the whole day fighting, Qin Feng did not dare to rest at night. He continued to use the blood-break bone molding liquid to temper his body. As the demonic eye said, every time he experienced it, the pain would increase. When the bottle of blood-break bone molding liquid was used up, Qin Feng's body almost lost consciousness. He rested for a while. After regaining control of his body, he entered the state of cultivation again. At the same time, the 100 calamity heaven-swallowing art was also operating. The speed of absorbing spirit energy had nearly doubled compared to before. In the following days, Qin Feng entered the mountains during the day to further practice the 100 calamity heaven-swallowing art with spirit beasts. At night, he used the blood-break bone molding liquid to temper his body. After a few days, Qin Feng could clearly feel the growth of his body's strength. Moreover, his spirit energy had also reached a bottleneck. He only needed an opportunity to open the 7th spirit vein. On the evening of the 6th day, when Qin Feng swallowed a spirit beast's blood qi that was comparable to an 8 spirit vein expert, he finally opened the 7th spirit vein and became a 7 spirit vein expert. The 5 bottles of blood-break bone molding liquid had been used up. Moreover, Qin Feng did not continue cultivating. According to the demonic eye, one should have a balance when cultivating. After several days of continuous cultivation, it was time for him to relax. Lying on the roof and looking at the waning moon in the sky, Qin Feng had a faint satisfied smile on his face. Compared to a few days ago, he was many times stronger. When he was at 6 spirit channels, he could already kill a spirit beast that was comparable to an 8 spirit channel. Now that he had opened another spirit channel, he was confident that he could challenge a 9 spirit channel expert, which was an expert like Cloudy Days. In less than a week's time, this kind of improvement was simply unheard of. Moreover, his foundation was very solid, without the slightest bit of weakness. This was inseparable from the blood-break bone-shaping liquid and the daily life and death tempering. Tomorrow is the underage group qualifiers. Cloudy Days were one step closer to each other. With both hands on the pillow, Qin Feng said with a faint smile. However, everyone present could hear the dense killing intent in his voice. Early the next morning, after a long sleep, Qin Feng's tiredness from the non-stop cultivation these days was swept away. He was full of energy and was at the peak of his condition. Under the guidance of the family, a group of people came to the big square in the center of the city. At this time, there was a sea of people, and all the clans had already arrived. The so-called underage group qualifiers were to select the most outstanding among the minors. It was a kind of test of temperament, talent, potential, and so on. Although it would not affect the ranking of the top 10 clans, there was a saying. Young people were the flowers of the future, the blood of the clan. The strength of the young people directly determined the future development of the clan. This was a new policy in recent years, and it was held by the City Lord's mansion. Naturally, all the clans enthusiastically signed up. The City Lord's mansion would also select some good seedlings to enter the City Lord's mansion's training camp. Those who performed well might be able to mingle in the city in the future. As for the outstanding ones, if they were chosen by the City Lord's mansion's big shots, they would be honored. Therefore, all the clans actively participated, and even the top 10 clans had people participating. Qin Feng was shocked when he arrived. The number of participants far exceeded his expectations. There were at least 400 to 500 people in the crowd. Glancing around, Qin Feng was slightly disappointed that no one from the Yin clan was participating. It seemed that with their family's status, they did not place much importance on this kind of competition. His gaze paused for a moment. On the other side, a few people caught his attention. Judging by their clothes, they should be from the 4th strongest clan, the Su clan. There were not many of them, only 5 or 6. However, all of them were full of energy, full of fighting spirit, and full of energy. They were not weak either, and most of them were 7 meridians. No wonder they are the 4th strongest clan, Qin Feng exclaimed. In the Qin family, there was no one else who could open 7 meridians except for him. With this comparison, the difference was obvious. The 6th strongest clan, the 8th strongest clan, the 9th strongest clan. Looking around, many clans had sent people. Just the top 10 clans alone had sent half of them. Other clans that had the ability to enter the top 10 were all here. From a certain perspective, this was a competition between the underage groups in the city of Sin. Dong. When the bell rang, the noisy square suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at the old man in the middle of the square. He was an elder of the City Lord's mansion and had a very high status. He was also the host of this year's underage selection. This is the first time the City of Sin has hosted a competition like this. Without further ado, I will explain the rules. Elder Mu Heng glanced around and said, "The rule of this competition is, there are no rules." Instantly, a commotion was created. There were no rules, so they could kill? Many clans began to hesitate. All the clans sent out their strongest disciples. If any of them were to die during the competition, it would be a great loss. Seeing everyone's expression, Mu Heng smiled. The city leader has opened up a special space in the Black Mountain Plains. That is where the competition will be held. As he spoke, Mu Heng waved his arm, and rays of spiritual light floated in the air. He smiled and said, "These are spatial jade slips. Each contestant has one. If you're in life-threatening danger, you can crush the jade slips, and you'll be automatically removed from that space." Hearing this, all the leaders sighed in relief. Mu Hing pointed with his finger and hundreds of jade scrolls fell into the hands of the participants. He said, "There are no rules. The time limit is 3 days. As long as you can endure for 3 days, you will pass the competition and enter the training camp." "We only need to stay for 3 days to enter the training camp?" Someone voiced out their doubts. "That's right. As long as you can stay for 3 days, you will have passed. Of course, there is one thing I need to mention." Mu Hing smiled and said, "There's a 1 on your jade slips. This is your starting score, and everything about you will be recorded in it. If you cause someone to leave because of a direct or indirect reason, their score will be transferred to your jade slip. The higher your score, the better your reward will be. Children, the competition has begun. Do your best." Chapter 7. Internal strife. His vision gradually distorted, and after a while, everything returned to normal. Qin Feng appeared in a mountainous area surrounded by lush green mountains. Occasionally, he could hear the roars of beasts. "Is this the special space of the Black Mountain Plains?" Qin Feng looked around and found that the number of people had decreased by more than half. There were only 100 or so people here, while the others were scattered in different areas. Everyone was stunned for a while, but they quickly recovered and began to be wary of others. Everyone knew that the trial had already begun, and if they wanted to pass, they would have to stay here for 3 days. The group retreated to what they thought was a safe area, then looked at others warily. No one attacked, because if they didn't fight, there was no danger of being kicked out of this space. "What rewards can we get with our points?" someone suddenly asked. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was a youth from the 6th strongest clan named Su Shua. He was very strong and had already opened his 7th meridian. He smiled faintly and said calmly, "Everyone, it's not a good thing to hide. The more points we have, the better." Everyone's eyes changed and became aggressive. If he hadn't reminded them, they would have forgotten that the jade slips were not only for saving their lives, but also for the points inside. If they wanted to increase their points, they had to think of a way to eliminate others. The people of the same clan began to band together. At this time, the more people there were, the better. However, most of them were scattered, and it was good enough to gather 3 or 5 people. Fortunately, the 8 members of the Qin family were not scattered and were all teleported to this area. Many people looked at Qin Feng with fear in their eyes. Boom! At that moment, a stone table suddenly fell from the sky with a rumbling sound. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked over to see a scroll and a sheepskin scroll on the table. "Ha! This should be a hint." Su Shua laughed and walked over to the stone table. Everyone was stunned, but soon understood that the top 10 clans had all received some hints. Everyone was envious. This was much better than them blindly searching. No one objected to Su Shua's decision to take the scrolls and sheepskin scrolls. After all, he had a high status and was incredibly powerful. The spiritual power that emanated from him caused even the other 7 meridians' youth to feel fear and trepidation. Although they were both experts of the 7 bloodlines, the background of the strong clans and the background of the slave clans could not be compared. Therefore, the cultivation they received was not on the same level. Su Shua flipped through the scroll, then looked at the sheepskin scroll. Finally, he closed it and looked at everyone. He calmly said, "This is a high-level battle skill, and this sheepskin scroll is a map. It records in detail the various routes and some dangerous areas." Everyone's eyes were burning. High-level battle skills were incredible battle skills. Apart from the top 10 clans, the strongest battle skills of the slave clans were only at this level. If he could obtain this kind of combat skill, the increase in his strength would be self-evident. There was also the map. Having this thing was equivalent to having a guiding light. Everyone was unfamiliar with this place, and it was easy for them to go astray. Furthermore, there were signs of dangerous areas on the map. This way they could avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble. But Su Shua's following words immediately chilled everyone from head to toe. I think this should be a benefit of the trial. Only the strongest have the qualifications to obtain it. Su Shua looked at everyone with a proud expression. He said, I think I have the qualifications. I don't know if anyone has any objections? Everyone cursed in their hearts. Putting aside strength, just based on your identity as the sixth strongest clan, who would dare to make a move against you? Haha, Big Brother Su is naturally the most qualified. If Big Brother Su is not qualified, who else here is qualified? Even if everyone was unwilling, they did not want to touch Su Shua's bad luck. They all went against their conscience to flatter him. Su Shua was very satisfied with this. He smiled and said, Everyone, don't worry. I am not someone who eats alone. However, there are too many people here. We have to eliminate some. I have decided. I will only share these 2 things with the 10 strongest people here. If you think you have the qualifications, then show me your strength. His meaning was very clear. Only 10 people other than him could survive here, and the others would be eliminated. Everyone looked at each other, all very troubled. There were over 100 people here. 90% of them would be eliminated. This probability was too terrifying. Big Brother Su, I don't want this benefit. I am willing to leave and survive alone. Someone braced himself and said. Many people also had this intention. After all, less than 1 in 10 remained. The possibility of them being able to persist was very small. No matter how good the benefits were, they also needed the strength to fight for it. Seeing the situation, Su Shua's face gradually darkened. He shook his head and said, I have already released 10 spots. Could it be that no one is willing to grasp it? Once these words came out, everyone was shocked. Suddenly, a miserable cry sounded out. Someone was beaten to serious injuries. He crushed the jade slip in front of everyone and was eliminated. Haha. Big Brother Su, I, Bai Hua, reserve one of the top 10 spots. A youth with a more robust figure laughed loudly and started to make a move on the people around him. He was the last 7 meridians expert apart from Qin Feng and Su Shua. The moment he made a move, a group of people fell. With him taking the lead, some people who thought that their strength was very strong started to make a move. Seeing this, Qin Feng secretly shook his head. These people were led by the nose by Su Shua so easily. If these people joined forces, a mere Su Shua would be easily suppressed. Everyone was too afraid of his identity and did not dare to offend him. Little did they know that they were forcing themselves into a dead end. Cousin Chongming, what should we do? A youth from the Qin family asked Qin Chongming with a worried face. Qin Chongming smiled faintly and waved his hand, saying, I have my own plans. You just need to follow behind me. I guarantee that none of you will be eliminated. Behind him, Qin Feng frowned. What was the meaning of this? With his strength, what right did he have to guarantee that none of them would be eliminated? Soon, the battle was over. Except for a few people who escaped, most of the people were eliminated. Aside from the 8 people from the Qin family and Su Shua, there were 5 people left. Only you guys are left. The 5 people came together. Brothers, don't worry. We will settle this ourselves. Qin Chongming smiled at them and then suddenly attacked Qin Feng. Qin Feng had long been on guard against him. He quickly dodged and said coldly, Qin Chongming, what is the meaning of this? The other youths were also confused. Why would Qin Chongming attack his own people? Only 5 of us will survive. Qin Chongming smiled and said, I will definitely be one of the 5. Qin Feng is destined to be eliminated. Who is willing to follow me and help me eliminate Qin Feng? Qin Chongming, how can you do this? We are all from the same clan. We should share honor and disgrace. A girl coldly said, You are Qin Cancan, right? Alright, you are the second one to be eliminated. Qin Chongming smiled. Cousin Chongming, I am willing to follow you. Qin Chongming's cousin, Qin Hai, said. He then stood behind Qin Chongming and glared at Qin Feng and Qin Cancan. Then, another person stepped forward. On the surface, 3 of the 6 meridians from the Qin family had joined forces. 2 youths looked at each other and hesitated for a moment before walking behind Qin Chongming. Chapter 8. Horizontal Sweep. Qin Hai, Qin Xing, you 2 eliminate Qin Feng. The remaining 2 will deal with Qin Cancan and Qin Yi. Qin Changming ordered. Okay. Qin Hai rubbed his palms together as he walked over with an evil grin. Qin Feng, Qin Cancan, Qin Yi, don't blame us. Fine, we don't need to do anything. Bai Hua laughed, but there was a hint of contempt in his smile. After arranging the battle strategy, Qin Changming took a few steps back and came to Su Shua's side. His face was full of flattery. Brother Su Shua, are you satisfied? And not bad. Su Shua nodded and laughed. It seems that your father really wants to rely on us. Don't worry, as long as your Qin family merges with my Su family, your father's status will not be lower than in the Qin family. Brother Su Shua's words, I naturally believe them without a doubt. Qin Changming nodded and bowed like a lackey. Here, we ask Brother Shua to take care of us. After saying that, Qin Changming turned around and looked at Qin Hai and the others. Suddenly, he straightened his back and said loudly, You all saw it. Brother Shua will protect us all the way to the end. You all have to work harder and perform well. Qin Changming, what do you mean? The Qin family has already clearly rejected the merger with the Su family. Does your father want to be a traitor? Qin Yi shouted angrily. What do you know? My father has great foresight. He knows that the Qin family will not be able to enter the top 10. This is a backup plan for the family. Qin Changming looked at Qin Yi with disdain, and then said to Qin Hai and the others, Since you all have chosen to follow me, then I promise you that after merging with the Su family, your lives will be better than now. Qin Hai heard this and his spirit shook. Everyone heard that, right? As long as we follow Cousin Changming, we will all have a good life. Qin Changming, Qin Hai, you traitors. Qin Cancan's face was red with anger. Qin Hai and the others didn't feel guilty at all. They had a self-confident look on their faces. Shameful. Qin Cancan could not find any words to describe these people. It turns out that second uncle has done so much behind the family's back. It's really touching. Qin Feng sneered and walked forward, staring at Qin Hai and the others. Are you sure you want to follow Qin Changming? The decline of the Qin family is inevitable. We just want to find a way out for ourselves. Qin Feng, if you know what's good for you, you'd better leave on your own. Otherwise, if we fight, we won't hold back. Just you. Qin Feng shook his head inwardly. He looked at Qin Cancan and Qin Yi and asked, Why didn't you follow them? I'm not as shameless as them. Even if my family is reduced to a slave family, it is still my family. Qin Cancan clenched his fists and said, Born as a member of the Qin family, dead as a ghost of the Qin family. I will never be a dog of another family, Qin Yi said. Seeing the determination on their faces, Qin Feng nodded inwardly. It's just a pity that I'm going to be eliminated at the beginning of the trial. I'm really unwilling. Qin Cancan's face was filled with regret. We have no chance of winning. We can only leave and report this matter to the family. Qin Yi analyzed. That's all we can do. Qin Cancan sighed, his face filled with disappointment. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for them. They only had the strength of 5 meridians. Although Qin Feng had 6 meridians, they were facing 2 6 meridians and 5 others. Adding on Su Shua, even if they doubled their numbers, they still wouldn't be enough. Seeing the two about to crush the jade slip, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. Are you two so unambitious? In any case, I don't want to withdraw. But with our strength, we can't contend with them. Qin Cancan said. Is that so? Qin Feng smiled and turned to face Qin Hai and the others. After a moment of silence, he muttered, I don't think so. Hearing Qin Feng's voice, Qin Yi and Qin Cancan's hearts trembled. They looked at each other in disbelief. Facing such a situation, how could Qin Feng still be so calm? It seems you haven't given up yet. Qin Changming sneered and ordered Qin Hai and the others. Attack! First, eliminate Qin Feng, regardless of life or death. Qin Hai and the rest immediately roared and rushed towards Qin Feng and the other two. The four of them seemed to have discussed it beforehand, and all of them attacked Qin Feng. From their point of view, Qin Yi and Qin Cancan were of no threat at all. Only Qin Feng. After all, he had defeated Qin Changming. Spiritual energy surged and astral winds wreaked havoc. Qin Feng smiled indifferently and used the body-changing steps, appearing beside the four of them. His body-changing steps had long since been perfected through life and death situations. Qin Hai and the others simply couldn't see how Qin Feng moved. They only heard a miserable scream. A youth was lying on the ground with his right leg bent at an irregular angle. It was obvious that Qin Feng had broken it with a kick. Qin Hai was shocked and shouted, Everyone, back to back! Boom! Just as he finished speaking, someone flew out and vomited blood before fainting. Qin Hai and the other six-channel youth were shocked. What happened? They hadn't even touched Qin Feng's clothes, yet two of them had already fallen. Was Qin Feng so powerful? Before the shock in his heart could settle, Qin Hai suddenly felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. He abruptly raised his head and his pupils fiercely shrank. What entered his eyes was an indifferent face. After a brief moment of shock, Qin Hai suddenly grabbed the hand on his shoulder. Spiritual energy erupted as he grinned. I've finally caught you. Suddenly, his body trembled and the violent spiritual energy completely disappeared. He couldn't help but tremble as he looked at Qin Feng's indifferent face and said in horror, My spiritual energy, how could you be so strong? Qin Feng's expression didn't change. His hand suddenly exerted force, breaking Qin Hai's shoulder. He screamed and directly fainted. The remaining youth looked at Qin Feng in horror and stood there, not daring to move. Not only him, but Su Shuo, Qin Changming, and Bai Hua were also shocked. 2 5-channel and 2 6-channel cultivators were actually so weak in Qin Feng's hand. They couldn't even withstand a single move and were defeated. Ignoring that person, Qin Feng turned to look at Su Shuo and the others. As he walked, he said, Thank you for helping me clear the obstacles. Now that your mission is over, you can leave. If you don't want to, I don't mind personally sending you off. You want to fight so many of us by yourself? Overestimating yourself? Bai Hua sneered. Although he felt that there was something wrong with Qin Feng, he was only 6-channel cultivator. How strong could he be? Moreover, he had opened 7 channels. This Qin Feng is not simple. Su Shuo thought to himself. Then, he said to Bai Hua and the others, This guy is a bit troublesome. You guys attack together. Even without his words, the others did the same and rushed over. Die. Bai Hua suddenly jumped up and punched Qin Feng. Qin Feng didn't dodge and also punched out. When the two fists collided, the crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard. Bai Hua's body trembled and he was sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood. In just one move, the 7-channel cultivator Bai Hua was sent flying. The other 4 were shocked. Looking at Qin Feng, they couldn't help but tremble. One move to defeat the 7-channel cultivator Bai Hua. What kind of strength was this? They weren't even on the same level. How could they fight? Let's fight it out with him. After all, the 4 of them had walked out of a bloody battle. When they were ruthless, they had some momentum. However, in the face of absolute suppression, momentum was useless. Qin Feng didn't put up any defense and let their fists hit his body. His body only trembled a little, but he wasn't injured at all. However, when he attacked, one of them lost the ability to fight. In just half a minute, the remaining 4 were all down. Chapter 9. Spiritual Pool. Seeing Qin Feng walking towards him, Qin Changming was scared out of his wit. He staggered backwards and fell to the ground. Qin Feng, what do you want to do? He suddenly sat up and cried out in fear. Who knew that Qin Feng would ignore him and walk towards Su Shua? The latter didn't panic at all and nodded calmly. You're strong enough to travel with me. Seeing Su Shua pretending to be calm, Qin Feng smiled contemptuously. Are you qualified to travel with me? At the same time, he reached out to grab Qin Shua. Qin Feng, don't be ungrateful. I'm giving you face by allowing you to travel with me. Don't be so shameless. Su Shua hurriedly took a few steps back and warned, I'm from the 6th strongest clan. The 6th strongest clan? Qin Feng murmured, his hand movements slowing down. Seeing this, Su Shua thought that Qin Feng was afraid and smiled proudly. Qin Feng, I see that you're strong enough to follow me. I promise. Slap. But before he could finish, Qin Feng slapped him and sent him flying. Su Shua was stunned. The fiery pain caused his expression to instantly turn malevolent. Qin Feng, you dare to hit me? He was trembling with anger. As a disciple of the 6th strongest clan, he had a sense of superiority when facing these slave clans. Everyone had to be respectful to him. Not to mention that the Qin family was even worse than some slave clans, and he was used to being flattered by others. Qin Feng's action was undoubtedly a naked humiliation. Su Shua wanted to tear Qin Feng to shreds, but he also knew that he was no match for Qin Feng, who could easily defeat Bai Hua and the others. He thought that Qin Feng would be afraid of his family's status, so he pretended to be humble. In the end, Qin Feng didn't even put him in his eyes. You've got guts. Throwing the sheepskin scroll in front of Qin Feng, Su Shua said coldly, It's a small world. We'll meet again. Indeed, we'll meet again, but not here. Qin Feng said. Su Shua frowned. What do you mean? Do you want to leave by yourself, or do you want me to help you? Qin Feng tilted his head. You want to eliminate me? Su Shua's eyes widened as he stared at Qin Feng in disbelief. Since you want to eliminate me, why can't I eliminate you? Qin Feng looked at Su Shua in amusement. There was nothing much to say to this kind of person who had a strong sense of superiority. Qin Feng, I've already given you the high-grade battle technique and the map. Not only that, the points here are all yours. There's no need to make things so tense between us. Don't worry, I won't bear grudges against you. Su Shua spoke. From Qin Feng's tone, it was clear that he wasn't joking. Su Shua was the 6th strongest clan. If he was eliminated at the beginning, he would lose face. I'll give in to you first. Wait until I join forces with the other members of the Su family. Today's humiliation will be repaid 100 times over. Calculating in his heart, the smile on Su Shua's face grew even brighter. If you let me go, I, Chen Shua, will owe you a favor. We still have 3 days here. If you meet a strong enemy, my Su family will definitely help you. Qin Feng smiled and said, The conditions seem good. Of course, I'm sincere. Seeing that there was room for negotiation, Su Shua hurriedly stood up and said, Here, you'll receive the full support of the Su family. We can even help you get more points. Very good. Qin Feng nodded and kicked Chen Shua away. He sneered, But who do you think you are? You're not qualified to negotiate with me. Su Shua screamed in pain. He knew that he was played by Qin Feng. He cursed, Little bastard, just you wait. The disciples of the Su family will not let you go. Is that so? Qin Feng quickly approached him. He grabbed his neck and lifted him up. He laughed softly and said, I won't let them go either. From the beginning of the selection, no one from the Su family will pass. Even if they don't come for me, I will come for them one by one. Looking at those emotionless black eyes, Su Shua swallowed his saliva. It was the first time he felt such cold, killing intent. It made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. You're a demon. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. He gradually increased the strength of his hand. Su Shua's face gradually turned red, then purple. In the end, he was afraid. He crushed the jade slip and left this space. His hands were empty, just like his heart. Qin Feng's eyes dimmed. He laughed at himself. A person who gave his soul to a demon is indeed a demon. Qin Feng turned around and looked at Qin Changming indifferently. Qin Changming shivered and shrunk his neck. He smiled and said, "Qin Feng, we're all from the same family. We should support each other." Scram! Qin Feng indifferently spat out a word. "Qin Feng, you can't do this to me." Qin Changming jumped up and shouted, "You should know that if more people from the Qin family pass the selection, it will be a good thing for the family." Qin Feng sneered, "With me here, do you think the Qin family needs traitors like you? If you don't scram, I'll kill you." Qin Changming was shocked. Qin Feng's eyes were too frightening. He couldn't help but feel fear. Finally, he looked at Qin Yi and Qin Cancan and said, "We're all from the same family. There's no need to kill each other. Qin Yi, Cancan, you have to say something for me." At this time, Qin Yi and Qin Cancan also regained their senses. Their expressions were cold. Qin Yi said, "Qin Changming, that's not what you said." Seeing the two of them acting like this, and then looking at the cold Qin Feng, Qin Changming knew that he couldn't stay here any longer. He also didn't want to curry favor with them, so he stood up and looked at Qin Feng mockingly, saying, "Qin Feng, no matter how strong you are, what's the use? There's still a week before the Surface's top 10 competition begins. And you're still underage. You don't even have the qualifications to participate. When the time comes, the family will be enslaved. You'll become a slave, and I'll still be one of the top 10 families. No matter how strong you are, you're destined to be enslaved by me. See how I'll torture you then." Qin Changming laughed crazily. Then, he crushed the jade slip and left. After Qin Hai and the others woke up, they didn't dare to stay and crushed the jade slip one after another. Qin Feng was expressionless. Qin Changming was right. Underage students didn't have the qualifications to participate in the competition, but he knew of a way to make an exception. That was to become the #1 underage student. That was the #1 underage student in the selection competition. Then, he would have the qualifications to participate in the competition. Once he eliminated everyone here, their points would naturally fall to Qin Feng. 103 points. Looking at the points on the jade slip, Qin Feng secretly shook his head. He didn't want to be #1. He wanted to crush everyone and let everyone see that the Qin family had lost Qin Yao, and now Qin Feng had come. Opening the scroll, 3 scarlet words appeared: Waning Moon /. Qin Feng was also quite concerned about high-level battle skills. He memorized the operation method and threw it to Qin Cancan and Qin Yi, saying, "Try it. See if you can master it." The two of them happily ran to the side and began to cultivate. Qin Feng picked up the sheepskin scroll and carefully looked at the map. He had a rough idea of what was going on. An hour later, the two of them stopped. They were somewhat dispirited. "Big brother Qin Feng, high-level battle skills are too hard." Qin Cancan pouted, her face full of disappointment. "High-level battle skills aren't that easy to cultivate. Moreover, your spiritual energy isn't enough to activate them." Qin Feng said. "Qin Feng, where are we going now?" Qin Yi asked. Qin Feng looked into the distance and paused for a moment before saying, "The final location, the spirit pool." "Spirit pool?" The two of them were delighted, but then they shook their heads. Qin Cancan said, "That kind of precious thing is probably occupied by those powerful clans. We don't have a chance. Heavenly treasures are obtained by those who have the ability. If you don't have enough strength, then even if you're from the #1 clan, what use is it?" Qin Feng shook his head, saying, "The best location for the spirit pool belongs to my Qin family. If anyone dares to refuse, then just beat them out." Chapter 10. My Qin family is going to. According to the map, Qin Feng and the other two avoided some dangerous areas and approached the center of the selection. This space was not small, and they were unfortunately sent to the farthest place from the center. If they wanted to reach there, it would take at least a day and a half. If they were delayed by an accident, it would take even longer. At this rate, I'm afraid the spiritual energy in the spirit pool will have dried up by the time we arrive. Qin Kankan sighed. They already knew that the most important thing in the selection was the spirit pool. This was the greatest benefit that the City Lord Mansion gave to the participants. If they could be baptized by the spirit pool, it would be extremely beneficial to them. The so-called 3 days was just a gimmick. If they did not do anything and just hid for 3 days, then even if they passed the selection, they would not be chosen. Since it was a selection, then the selection was for the elite. Only by going through the baptism of test after test would they be able to prove themselves and be chosen. No worries, the spirit pool will open on the 3rd day. Qin Feng smiled. There was a reminder on the sheepskin scroll. This was also the last bit of fairness. Although the map clearly indicated the dangerous areas, it was impossible to be detailed. They still encountered some attacks from spirit beasts, but they were all at the early stage of the 1st rank. They did not have any effect on Qin Feng and the other two. On the morning of the 3rd day, Qin Feng and the other two finally arrived at the center. This was a vast plain. In the distance there was a group of people surrounding something. Spirit pool. Qin Kankan cried out in surprise. Qin Ye's eyes were also shining, full of desire. At this time, there were already many people gathered around the spirit pool. These were the other participants who had arrived earlier. As for the arrival of Qin Feng and the other two, these people did not pay much attention to them. They were all nervously staring at the spirit pool. Arriving here, Qin Feng looked around and found that there were indeed many people here. There were at least 100 people, and each of them was in high spirits. Obviously, these were all people with good strength. Looking around, Zhang Xian's gaze finally stopped at the spirit-dissolving pool. This was a pool that was 50 meters long and wide. The water in the pool was clear, and white steam was rising from it. It carried a refreshing fragrance that made one feel refreshed. "Kid, you came from the north, so you should be from the north. Tell me, where did the others go?" A young man walked over and asked. As soon as he spoke, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. At this time, everyone realized that people from the east, west, and south had come, and there were dozens of people in each. Only the north had only 3 people, which was a little strange. Moreover, the person who spoke was none other than the Lo family. Although they were only a slave family, they were extremely powerful and were one of the most likely to become one of the top 10 families. Other than the top 10 families, of course, the Qin family was an exception. All the other families would give them some face. Qin Feng glanced at him indifferently and ignored him, continuing to focus on the spirit pool. Qin Feng's disregard made Li Tianxing furious. He said, "What the hell are you doing in front of me? A declining family that is about to be removed from the top 10 family dares to put on airs in front of me?" Finishing his words, Li Tianxing rushed over and punched Qin Feng's head. Qin Feng didn't move until Li Tianxing's fist was 30 centimeters away from his head. Then, he suddenly reached out and grabbed Li Tianxing's fist. His attack was blocked, and Li Tianxing was stunned for a moment. Then, he sneered and kicked Qin Feng's groin kick. Qin Feng's eyes flashed coldly, and his arm suddenly twisted. With a crack, Li Tianxing's arm was suddenly twisted, and his flesh split open. Sharp white bones pierced out of the skin and exposed to the air. Li Tianxing screamed in pain and knelt in front of Qin Feng. His face was twisted in pain. When everyone saw this scene, they all sweated. What a cruel way of fighting. Even if Li Tianqing's arm wasn't crippled, it would be difficult for it to recover. On the quiet plain, Li Tianqing's painful howls continued, but his fist was held by Qin Feng, so he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Bastard, I'm going to kill you! Li Tianqing's eyes were red as he roared loudly. Qin Feng was expressionless, but the strength in his hand gradually increased. Li Tianqing's twisted arm was even more twisted, and even a squeaking sound came out. It was so painful that he almost fainted. The other 4 members of the Lu family rushed over, but when they saw Qin Feng's cold eyes, they all subconsciously took a step back, not daring to make a move. Qin Feng, you'd better let go of Li Tianqing, or your Lu family won't be able to bear the wrath of the Qin family. They didn't dare to get close, and only dared to threaten from a distance. Qin Feng glanced at them indifferently, and the corner of his mouth rose slightly, and the degree of distortion became even greater. Li Tianqing couldn't hold on any longer, and immediately crushed the jade slip, leaving this place. Otherwise, his arm would be twisted off. Li Tianqing was forced to crush the jade slip, but from beginning to end, Qin Feng didn't say a single word, and didn't even bother to make any extra facial expressions. He just stared at the spirit pool. The 4 youths of the Lu family were furious, but they couldn't charge over, so they could only leave behind a few fierce words and dive into the crowd. This small disturbance ended with Li Tianqing's elimination, but the process was hair-raising. Li Tianqing was a 6 meridian expert, but he was so weak in front of Qin Feng. Everyone began to pay attention to this Qin Feng, who was even younger than them, and their eyes were filled with fear. On the other side, the members of the Su family frowned. One of the youths walked over and asked, Qin Feng, have you seen Qin Shua? Qin Feng didn't pay any attention to him, and didn't even turn his head, directly ignoring him. The youth's face sank, and just as he was about to walk over, another person stopped him. Little Qi, don't be rash. Brother Hao, Qin Feng is too arrogant. Chen Qi said unwillingly. Little Shua should have been delayed. Chen Hao shook his head and said, the Su family, Ye family, and Gu family's main forces haven't been injured. It's not good for us to fight with others now. Once our main forces are injured, the other families will be less afraid of us, and this is not beneficial to the competition for the spirit pool. Chen Qi nodded, coldly looking at Qin Feng, and retreated. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. The Su family actually retreated, and didn't dare to fight with Qin Feng. Was this still the style of the 6th strongest family, the Su family? It was simply inconceivable. When the sun rose to the top of the trees, the spirit pool rippled, and ripples spread out. The spirit pool is open. Everyone's eyes suddenly burned, and they rubbed their fists, eager to give it a try. Every family began to choose a location, and the 4 families naturally had the priority. They all chose the central area, where the spirit energy was denser, and they could obtain a better baptism. Although everyone was envious, they couldn't do anything about it. The other strength was there, so who would dare to fight with them? In the central area, the area within a radius of 10 meters was occupied by 4 powerful clans. Chapter 11. The situation became more and more intense. When Qin Feng's voice spread throughout the area, everyone was dumbfounded. Some people even picked at their ears, thinking that they had misheard. He actually wanted to monopolize the central area? Was this a joke? In front of the 4th, 6th, 8th, and 9th strongest clans, Qin Feng actually dared to be so impudent? If his brain wasn't fried, then he had absolute strength. Everyone believed the former because the latter was impossible. There were already more than 10 people who had opened 7 meridians in the 4 great clans. Including the other clans, there were at least 20 of them. As for those who had opened 6 meridians, 80% of them had reached this level of strength. Who among the miners could challenge so many people at once? No matter how powerful Qin Feng was, it was impossible for him to deal with so many of them. Your Qin family is on the verge of decline, yet you want to monopolize the best area? What do you take us for? The ninth strongest clan, the Gu family, Gu Hong, coldly said. Yeah, what qualifications does the Qin family have to occupy the best area? In my opinion, even if it's the House of Bai, the Lu family is more qualified than the Qin family. The group of people chattered and mocked him. They felt that Qin Feng's request was laughable. Qin Cancan and Qin Yi were shocked by the condemnation. They stared blankly at Qin Feng. They didn't ask for much. They would be satisfied as long as they could enter the spiritual pool and receive the baptism. They didn't expect Qin Feng to be so ambitious. By saying this, he had directly divided the four great clans into his opposition. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this kind of action was crazy. Qin Feng was indifferent. He stared at the spiritual pool and said, "I'm not discussing this with you. This is an order." The entire area was in an uproar. What did they hear? Qin Feng actually ordered everyone not to compete with him. Was this action courting death? Or did he not want to live? The four great clans are still here. What right do you have to speak? Are you trying to use this to attract people's attention and expose your fame? What a joke. Everyone has seen how arrogant the Qin family is. I suggest that we eliminate the Qin family before we enter the spiritual pool. I agree. For people like him who don't have the ability but still dare to spout nonsense, he should be eliminated first so that he doesn't become a nuisance. Please ask the people of the four great clans to step forward and stop this kind of person from causing trouble for no reason. A group of people voiced their opinions one after another. Among them, those from the Lu family and the House of Bai were particularly enthusiastic. They fanned the flames from the sidelines, causing everyone's dissatisfaction. Qin Feng's expression didn't change at all as he stared at the spirit pool. It was as if there was nothing else in his eyes other than the spirit pool. To him, this was indeed the case. He had already killed several late-stage first-order spirit beasts. This kind of selection, to him, was really just playing house. What he wanted was to be the absolute number one. As for his opponents, there was really no one here who could catch his eye. Qin Feng, do you think you are someone like your sister, Qin Yao? Saying such ungrateful words is really a disgrace to the Qin family. At this time, someone from the ninth great clan stepped forward. Humph, what's the use of Qin Yao? She was crippled in the end. She's just a whore who stole a man. She usually pretends to be virtuous to deceive people, Li Xiang said in a frivolous tone. Qin Feng's eyes turned cold. He suddenly moved in front of Li Xiang. Before the latter could react, he felt a pain in his chest and was sent flying. Qin Feng, how dare you? Everyone, let's attack together and teach this arrogant person a lesson. Someone from the Lu family shouted, wanting everyone to besiege Qin Feng. Slap. However, as soon as his voice fell, Qin Feng flashed and slapped him. That person spun and flew out, most of his teeth falling out. Before the other two people could escape into the crowd, Qin Feng caught up with them. With a punch, the two of them vomited blood and fell to the ground. Qin Feng walked in front of Li Xiang and stepped on his chest. He looked down at him and said coldly, "Do you know that insulting my sister is the biggest mistake you have made in your life? Some mistakes don't need to be forgiven because they will never have the chance to make a second mistake." As soon as his voice fell, Qin Feng suddenly bent down and quickly slashed his arm. A cold light flashed and a string of blood appeared on Li Xiang's neck. Then, blood sprayed out. Li Xiang looked at Qin Feng in fear. He covered his neck, but blood continued to spurt out. His eyes gradually darkened. His limbs twitched a few times and he completely fell silent. Everyone around the spiritual pool stared blankly at this scene. A chill ran down their spines, making them feel cold all over. From Qin Feng's attack to Li Xiang's death, only a few breaths had passed. However, before the crowd could react, one of the four people from the Lu family was dead and 3 were injured. Gulp. Some people swallowed their saliva. They were truly frightened. While everyone was frightened, they were also glad that they did not insult Qin Yao. Otherwise, the one lying on the ground would be them. Everyone could not help but feel sorry for Li Xiang. Of all things to say, he just had to insult Qin Feng's sister. Was he not courting death? Moreover, everyone knew what was going on. Whether Qin Yao had an affair or not, and why she was crippled, everyone was clear in their hearts. Qin Feng's gaze moved, and everyone who met his gaze retreated. The three people from the Lu family trembled. Seeing Qin Feng's beast-like eyes, they did not hesitate and immediately crushed the jade slip and left. They did not want to follow in Li Xiang's footstep. Qin Feng stood up and looked around. Finally, his gaze stopped on the Gu family. He said, "Who else objects?" Everyone was silent. At this time, some activists also became well-behaved. They did not want to stand out. No one said anything. Qin Feng shook his head and looked at the Su family. He said with a mocking tone, "If Su Shuo did not run fast enough, he would have been killed by me. Is the Su family useless?" Everyone was shocked. What was wrong with Qin Feng? No one objected to him. Why did he take the initiative to provoke the Su family? With him mocking them, the Su family had no choice but to do something. Sure enough, the people from the Su family walked out with gloomy expressions and stared at Qin Feng. Seeing this, Qin Feng smiled slightly and seemed very satisfied. He pointed at the people from the house of Bai and said, "Bai Hua was beaten half to death by me. Qin Feng, you are courting death." The 7 or 8 people from the house of Bai stood together with the 6th strongest clan, the Su family, and the 9th strongest clan, the Gu family. What about the Su family and the Ye family? 2 powerful clans are fighting over their own territories. Are you still going to stand by and do nothing? Everyone was shocked. What was Qin Feng trying to do? He injured the Lu family, angered the Su family, provoked the house of Bai, and now targeted the 4th strongest clan, the Su family, and the 8th strongest clan, the Ye family. Was he really going to fight against 4 powerful clans alone? The people from the Ye family walked out. Their bodies were surging with powerful spiritual power. Qin Feng was courting death. The powerful clans had no choice but to take action. Chapter 12. Overwhelming suppression around the spirit pool. The people from the various large clans had all retreated, leaving a large space. The 6th strongest clan was the Su family, the 8th strongest clan was the Ye family, the 9th strongest clan was the Gu family, and the strongest slave clan was the house of Bai. There were over 20 people from these 4 clans gathered together. Among them, there were over 10 people who had opened 7 meridians, and over a dozen experts who had opened 6 meridians. With such a lineup, even the 4th strongest clan, the Su family, would have to temporarily avoid them. Everyone found it hard to imagine that the Qin family, no, just Qin Feng, had the confidence to challenge so many clans. What about the Su family? Why haven't they made a move yet? Someone noticed that the Su family had also retreated and didn't participate in the battle. Qin Feng also noticed this. He looked at the Su family and asked, "You don't plan on making a move?" Just as a youth from the Su family walked out, he was stopped by an extremely beautiful girl. She said, "If you have the ability to last until the end, what harm is there in giving you the center? But if you can't, then don't blame us for beating you when you're down." Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. This was the first time he had seriously sized up a participant. The girl was about 15 or 16 years old, and had 2 ponytails. When she pursed her lips, 2 small dimples would appear. She was very cute. Her eyes were big and lively. She looked a bit immature, but she was very experienced. Her words had 2 meanings. They respected the strong. As long as one had absolute strength, they would be able to win their respect. But if one spoke empty words, then they would have to pay the corresponding price. What she meant was that they wouldn't make a move. As long as he had the ability to defeat the large clans, they would give him the center. On the other hand, as long as he showed the slightest sign of weakness, they would make a move. Not a bad plan. After staring at the girl for a while, Qin Feng withdrew his gaze and chuckled. He had finally met someone with some ability. Smiling, he looked at the alliance of the large clans and said indifferently, "If you want to take turns fighting, then come at me together. I suggest you do it together so that you don't waste my time." The disciples of the allied clans were furious. This was looking down on them and provoking them. "We will do as you wish. I hope that when the time comes you can quickly crush the jade slip. Otherwise, don't blame us if you are killed." More than 20 people walked over together, and their combined aura was quite oppressive. At the Su family seat, Su Yan asked, "Miss Su Yuan, this guy is provoking us. Why aren't we doing anything?" Su Yuan frowned. "You're against my decision?" Su Yan's face tightened as he hurriedly lowered his head and said, "I don't dare." Su Yuan sighed when she saw the unwillingness on their faces even though they said they didn't dare. She said, "Do you really think Qin Feng is a fool? You dare to provoke so many families?" Hearing this, Su Yan and the others were shocked. "Does he really have this ability?" "I don't know." Su Yuan shook her head and said, "But I know that the 100 or so people who were teleported to the north were all eliminated by him." Su Yan and the others exclaimed in shock. He said in disbelief, "How is this possible? With just the 3 members of the Qin family, apart from those 2, how can Qin Feng defeat more than 100 people by himself? Moreover, that includes Chen Shuo and Bai Hua, who have opened 7 meridians." Su Yuan continued, "Have you forgotten how he provoked the families?" Su Yan and the rest felt a chill in their hearts. Everyone seemed to only be paying attention to Qin Feng's provocation of the major clans, but they had neglected another point. That was, out of the 100+ people in the north, only Qin Feng and the other 2 came here. If they thought about it carefully, their scalps would go numb. Eliminating the low possibility of them killing each other until only Qin Feng and the other 2 were left, there was only one possibility. Qin Feng had eliminated more than 100 people in the north by himself. That's why, when something happens, you must stay calm. Don't bring disaster to the whole team. Su Yuan looked at Qin Feng and said in a low voice, "This is a very scary person. Don't fight him when he's strong. Kill him when he's at his weakest. Of course, if you can become friends with him, then it's a different story." On the plains, the atmosphere was tense and oppressive. The air was filled with a faint, killing intent. A group of people slowly walked over. The powerful spiritual energy fluctuations caused everyone's heart to palpitate. This kind of lineup was a disaster for any one of them. There was no way they could contend against it. Qin Feng's expression became slightly more serious. After all, the other party had 10 people with 7 meridians. He was not afraid, but he would not be arrogant and treat them as fools. Thus, he slightly arched his body, spread his legs apart, and bent his body a little. After his body was still for a moment, he suddenly rushed out like a cheetah that had been lying in wait for its prey. He suddenly rushed out, turning into a sharp black arrow, and instantly rushed into the crowd. Rumble! As soon as they came into contact, several people on the opposite side fell. Some were seriously injured by Qin Feng, but even more were hit by the collision. With the current strength of his physical body, other than those with 7 meridians that could barely contend against him, the others would definitely not be able to defend against him. Thus everyone saw such a scene. When Qin Feng rushed into the crowd, the stable formation was suddenly messed up. At that moment, a few people were sent flying and collided with the people behind them, causing a chain reaction. More than half of the people fell to the ground. At least half of them had completely lost the ability to fight. Qin Feng sent 2 people flying. Taking advantage of their confusion, he used both his fists and legs. In a few breaths' time, The people who had just stood up fell again. This time, they were unable to get up. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched this scene. They felt their mouths go dry. Qin Feng was facing more than 20 experts alone. His courage to take the initiative to attack was commendable, but he was actually able to create such a terrifying result. As soon as they exchanged blows, more than half of the 20 people had lost the ability to fight. What kind of battle power was this? After another 5 people fell, the members of the great clans finally regained their senses and were no longer in chaos. At this moment, there were only 8 people left standing. Among them, 3 of them had the strength of 6 meridian channels. In other words, in the instant they exchanged blows, 7 meridian channels had been attacked by Qin Feng and lost the ability to fight. This was practically an indiscriminate attack. 7 or 6 meridian channels were all the same in front of Qin Feng. They were all very weak. When the crowd saw this scene, they were so shocked that they were speechless. Qin Feng was also somewhat stunned. Was he too strong, or was his opponent too weak? He had actually defeated more than half of them. He had originally thought that the battle would be somewhat difficult. Who knew that it would be so smooth? Fight it out with him. The remaining people launched fierce attacks at Qin Feng. If they were still defeated with so many people, then they would have no face to continue living. Qin Feng dodged an attack and suddenly closed in. He lifted the person up and swung him around like a weapon. After one round, 2 people were sent flying, their bodies covered in blood. Qin Feng lifted him up and swung around. Sometimes he swung, sometimes he swung, sometimes he swung, sometimes he swung, sometimes he swung horizontally. A living person was swung around more nimbly than a weapon. Too brutal. This guy is a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was the first time the crowd had seen such a battle. How could they believe that one person could actually suppress 10 7 meridian channel experts and 15 6 meridian channel experts? This was simply a fierce tiger pouncing into a flock of sheep. This was not a battle, but a crushing. One person was crushing 20 experts. 3 minutes later, there were only 2 people left on the battlefield. However, both of them were gasping for breath and their spirit energy was weak. It was obvious that they were arrows at the end of their flight. Qin Feng let go of his weapon, who had already fainted, and indifferently walked towards the remaining 2 people. Both of them had bitter expressions and wanted to cry. What the hell was this guy? A fighting machine? Wasn't he tired at all? Whoosh! Chapter 13. Qin Feng's plan around the spiritual pool. Silence reigned. Even the sound of the wind seemed to have disappeared. Everyone stared at the young man in the middle of the field, unable to regain their senses. One person defeated more than 20 powerhouses. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe it. Even though they saw it with their own eyes, many people still couldn't believe it and thought it was an illusion. How can he be so strong? Su Yan struggled to speak. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Though Su Yuanyuan's face was expressionless, her panting breaths betrayed her inner calmness. He knew that Qin Feng dared to challenge so many clans because he had the ability. But he didn't expect him to be this strong. This was beyond his knowledge. He was only 16 years old, not even an adult yet. How could he be so strong? Only now did everyone realize what was going on. Their faces were filled with fear as they remembered what Qin Feng said when he challenged the clans. Chen Shuo and Bai Hua were both defeated by him. Then, they remembered that only the 3 of them came from the north. A terrifying answer came to mind. Qin Feng eliminated more than 100 people from the north by himself. If only someone was more attentive and understood the meaning behind Qin Feng's words, the situation would have been different. One person had the ability to eliminate everyone from the north. Who would dare to make an enemy out of someone like that? Even the clans didn't dare to. But at that time, they were provoked and blinded by anger, so they didn't think of this. How could he be so strong? This was the question in everyone's mind. If they didn't know Qin Feng's background, they would have suspected that the Qin family sent an adult to participate in the competition. Thinking of this, everyone's hair stood on end. Everyone seemed to have forgotten one thing. This was the selection competition for minors. Qin Feng wasn't an adult yet. He was only 16 years old, yet he had the ability to defeat everyone. Regarding Qin Feng's ability, everyone was terrified. He opened his 7th spiritual meridian. Someone from the Su clan spoke. He didn't bother to hide his voice, causing a huge commotion in the area. 16 years old, 7 meridians, this was already equal to the record of his sister, Qin Yao, the super genius from the city of Sin. Since the beginning of time, in the city of Sin, the number of people who were able to open 7 spiritual meridians at the age of 16 could be counted with one's fingers. Every single one of them grew up to become important figures. Furthermore, Qin Feng had not only opened 7 spiritual veins, but his strength was also extraordinarily strong. Which 7 spiritual veins expert could instantly crush so many experts of the same level. Even the geniuses of the top 3 clans, people like Qin Yao, couldn't do it back then. After dealing with so many people, Qin Feng was still expressionless. He coldly glanced at the others and asked, "Is there anyone else who objects?" Everyone retreated, not daring to meet his gaze. "You've won. Our seats are yours," someone from the Gu family said. Qin Feng shook his head and said, "What right does a defeated general have to negotiate with me? Get lost." "What? You want to eliminate all of us?" Gohong was furious. All the clans were shocked and unsettled. If Qin Feng were to make a move against them, who could stop him? "Not all of us." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "The Su family, the Gu family, and the House of Bai, I will give you one last chance. If you don't leave, don't blame me for killing you." "You dare? Are you not afraid of our clan's revenge?" Gohong said. Not only him, but everyone else didn't believe that Qin Feng would dare to kill people from the clans. Because to them, Qin Feng had already achieved his goal. There was no need for him to do this. Plus, they were all powerful clans. Wasn't he afraid that the clans would secretly take revenge on the Qin family? Is that so? Qin Feng smiled coldly. He suddenly punched the head of a Gu family disciple under his feet. "Qin Feng, you're courting death." Gohong and the other Gu family disciples' eyes instantly turned red. Qin Feng swiftly rushed to the front of Gohong. The blade in his hand slashed down, slicing off Gohong's head. After that, he didn't say anything and directly started a massacre. His dagger flew through the air as cold light shot out, reaping lives. In the end, the people from the clans were all terrified. They all crushed their jade scrolls and left. Everyone stared at Qin Feng, who was standing on the blood-soaked ground. Each and every one of them felt a chill from head to toe as fear rose from the bottom of their hearts. This was simply an Azura that crawled out from hell. The corpses beneath his feet were corroding their tensed nerve. Who would have thought that Qin Feng would really start a massacre like this? He killed almost 10 people. If those people hadn't left, none of them would have survived. You're allowing us to stay here?" Someone from the Ye family asked in a trembling voice. Qin Feng smiled faintly. He looked at the Ye family members who were almost scared out of their wits and said, "Do I have a reason to eliminate you?" Everyone was dizzy. What was going on? The Su family, Gu family, and House of Bai clans had all left because of him, and now he was actually saying that he didn't have a reason to eliminate the Ye family? What kind of trick was this? The Ye family members were also dumbfounded. They looked at each other, not understanding Qin Feng's intentions. In fact, Qin Feng had his own plans. The Su family not only didn't help the Qin family when they were weak, but they even wanted to take advantage of the situation and annex the Qin family. This caused Qin Feng to be disgusted. The Gu family was the 9th strongest clan, while the Qin family was the 10th strongest clan. The former wanted to maintain the 9th position, while the latter wanted to move up one rank. They had been fighting constantly, and the relationship between the two clans had deteriorated. As for the Lu family and the House of Bai, they were the two strongest clans among the slave clans. They were the most qualified clans to eliminate the Qin family. Therefore, they often joined forces with other clans, and even the Gu family, to suppress the Qin family. Since they had irreconcilable grievances with the other three clans, what reason did Qin Feng have to keep them? On the other hand, Qin Feng had also cut off all his escape route. After this incident, the Su family, Gu family, Lu family, House of Bai, and other clans would definitely seek revenge on the Qin family. The only way was for him to get a good ranking in the top 10 competition on the surface. At the very least, he couldn't be lower than the 6th strongest clan. This way, the Qin family's status would rise, and they wouldn't dare to seek revenge even if they wanted to. Therefore, Qin Feng could only succeed in the top 10 competition on the surface. Otherwise, the Qin family was destined to be swallowed up by the other clans. Due to various reasons, these clans were destined to be eliminated when the preliminaries began. No one objected anymore, and the Qin family naturally obtained the best location. The central area within a radius of 10 meters belonged to the Qin family. Even the Su family and the Ye family were 10 meters away. Soaking in the spiritual pool, Qin Feng could clearly feel strands of pure spiritual energy entering his body, increasing the amount of spiritual energy he needed to break through the 8th spirit meridian. Qin Yi and Qin Cancan looked at Qin Feng with admiration. "Brother Qin Feng, how are you so powerful?" Qin Cancan's eyes were shining with golden hearts, and her admiration for Qin Feng couldn't be any greater. In the past, she had never heard of Qin Feng's cultivation talent. Chapter 14. Devouring Power in the Spiritual Pool. Everyone looked at the three members of the Qin family in the center with envy. Around them, wisps of white smoke rose. That was the result of their spiritual energy being too rich. The center of the spiritual pool was the place with the densest spiritual power. Naturally, it would have the best baptism effect. In terms of points, the central region would get full marks, while the peripheral regions would only get 2 marks at most. The difference was obvious. But no matter how unwilling they were, no one stood out, because even the 4th strongest clan, the Su clan, had admitted that they didn't dare to provoke Qin Feng. Who else would dare? In the center of the spiritual pool, Qin Feng felt incomparably comfortable. It was as if every pore on his body was opening and absorbing the pure spiritual energy. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He felt that the flow of spiritual energy in the surrounding pool water had changed. It seemed to be slowly dispersing. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the Su family. "Qin Feng, let's just rely on our own abilities. That shouldn't be a problem, right?" Su Yuanyuan smiled. Qin Feng lowered his head slightly, and his eyes narrowed slightly. The spiritual energy around him was actually moving towards the Su family, as if there was a suction force. Could it be that they have a way to absorb the spiritual energy here? Qin Feng's heart sank. If that was the case, then what was the point of him seizing the best spot? She's the 4th strongest race, so she should have some extraordinary treasures. Qin Feng raised his head. His gaze was neither salty nor indifferent as he said, "You guys are quite bold. You actually set your sights on me." Su Yen and the other disciples of the Su clan shuddered when they heard this, and they all hinted to Su Yuanyuan to not look for trouble with Qin Feng. Although one's fortune depended on one's ability, Qin Feng was obviously not so easy to reason with. It was already good enough that they could be baptized in the spiritual pool. They didn't want to provoke Qin Feng because of this and cause their side to be eliminated in the end. They were indeed traumatized by this ruthless and decisive fellow. Su Yuanyuan didn't ask any questions. She just smiled and looked at Qin Feng. However, her hands, which were submerged in the water, clenched together unnaturally. It was obvious that she was also quite nervous. The air froze because of this. Everyone in the pool could feel that the air they breathed was suffocating. After a long time, Qin Feng suddenly laughed and said, "Let's rely on our own abilities. Su family, everyone present, as long as you have the strength, go ahead and use it. If I can't protect the spiritual power around me, it's my own fault. It has nothing to do with you." Qin Feng smiled bitterly. It wasn't that he didn't care, but there was no need to offend a family that had no grudges with the Qin family. Moreover, one's luck depended on one's own ability. This was not wrong in itself. He couldn't force others to obey him. That would be too unreasonable. He targeted those few families because he had a grudge with the Qin family. As for the other families, he wouldn't target them too much. Otherwise, it would only put the Qin family in an awkward position of being isolated and helpless. Ha! Brother Qin Feng, in that case, we won't hold back. The Ye family's Ye Lin laughed heartily at Qin Feng. Ha! If Brother Yi has the strength, then bring it on. Qin Feng also laughed. From Qin Feng to Brother Qin Feng, this was a fundamental change in attitude. From enemies to strangers and now to friends. The previous hostility was completely due to their standpoint. Moreover, there was no grudge between the two families. Everyone was young and impetuous. Qin Feng also didn't force the Ye family, so they naturally wouldn't hold a grudge because of the battle just now. They even began to admire Qin Feng. After all, everyone respected the strong from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Feng's actions clearly won the favor of everyone present. Everyone's gazes became much friendlier. Every family gathered around and used their own methods to absorb the spiritual power around Qin Feng. Feeling a large amount of spiritual power being sent out, Qin Feng had a helpless expression. There were only 3 of them. There was no way they could fight against so many people. In the pool, the Su family and the Ye family absorbed the spiritual power the fastest. The milky white spiritual power was almost visible to the naked eye as it entered their location. Feeling the loss of spiritual power around him, Qin Feng was at his wit's end. His heart ached. Idiot, the 100 calamity sky devouring technique is known to devour everything. Devouring this little bit of spiritual power is a piece of cake. Mo Yan's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind. But I need to touch the devoured object to use the devouring ability, Qin Feng said in his mind. Indeed, the initial stage of the 100 calamity sky devouring technique requires a medium to devour. However, the spiritual power here isn't natural. It's artificially refined. The water around you is the medium, Mo Yan said. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. Will this work? You just need to treat the water as the corpses of the spirit beasts and the spiritual power as their blood. Naturally, it will work. Hearing this, Qin Feng calmed down and silently operated the 100 calamity sky devouring technique. As expected, the amount of spiritual power he absorbed increased. It really works. Qin Feng was overjoyed. He quickly operated the 100 calamity sky devouring technique. The devouring power exploded and spread out, devouring the surrounding spiritual power. What's going on? Everyone clearly felt that something was wrong, especially the people from the Su family and the Yi family. Their faces were filled with bewilderment because the spiritual energy around them was uncontrollably flowing back to where Qin Feng was. Everyone looked at Qin Feng. Their faces were filled with shock and confusion. Why did their spiritual energy flow back? Let's rely on our own abilities. That's what you said. Looking at Ye Lin, Su Yuan, and the others, Qin Feng said with a smile, Everyone, you won't fall out with me so easily, right? Everyone was stunned. Ye Lin laughed loudly. Brother Qin, you're underestimating our tolerance. Moreover, you might not win. As he spoke, Ye Lin and the others sped up their absorption speed to fight against Qin Feng. Seeing this, the Su family also joined in to fight against Qin Feng. The people from the other families also secretly sped up their absorption speed. In a short period of time, both sides were in a stalemate. No one could gain the upper hand. "Brother Ye, your method doesn't seem to have much effect," Su Yuanyuan said with a smile. Yelin also laughed and said, "Actually, I'm already very impressed by Brother Qin. After all, with so many of us working together, you can barely fight against us. That's already very impressive." Qin Feng smiled faintly, shook his head, and asked, "Do you really think so?" As soon as he finished speaking, the suction force around Qin Feng suddenly increased. The devouring power was fully released, and the spiritual power in the entire pool crazily rushed towards him. The speed was so fast that it formed a spiritual power vortex around him. Everyone's spiritual power was uncontrollably devoured. Everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape. They felt that it was unbelievable. What did Qin Feng do to be able to absorb the spiritual power in the entire pool? When they were in a stalemate, the amount of spiritual power they absorbed was only the size of a pinky finger. Now, Qin Feng's suction force was as big as a washbasin. No one could fight against it. In the end, even the people around them were sucked in. For some reason, Qin Feng was able to circulate the 100 calamity sky devouring art smoothly here. Those who entered the vortex had their spiritual power sucked out. "Brother Qin, have mercy," Yelin shouted. He, Su Yuanyuan, and the others were the closest to Qin Feng. They were the first to be sucked into the vortex. Sensing that their spiritual power was being sucked out of their bodies, they could no longer stay calm. Qin Feng slowed down his devouring speed and said with a smile, "Do you guys want to maintain the original state or return to the state of no fighting?" Everyone was shocked and stared blankly at Qin Feng. What did he mean by that? He clearly had the ability, but he didn't want to take advantage of them? Looking at the stunned crowd, Qin Feng smiled again and put away the 100 calamity sky devouring art. "Brother Qin's magnanimity puts us to shame," Yelin sighed. With an absolute advantage, at least he couldn't be as magnanimous as Qin Feng. Everyone no longer used their own methods and absorbed spiritual power normally. They admired Qin Feng even more, and their favorability towards him also increased by one level. Chapter 15. Hand over the treasures. Slowly sinking into the pool, Qin Feng scanned around. After a while, he froze. Below him, 3 black shadows were swimming towards the depths like fishes. Who are they? What do they want? Qin Feng was confused. Before this, he had already noticed that these 3 people were acting strangely. Even though their performance was normal and did not attract much attention, Qin Feng instinctively felt that something was off about them. When they were secretly diving into the water, he was certain that his guess was correct. These people had other motives. He secretly followed them and continued to dive deeper. The 3 of them noticed Qin Feng as well, but they did not stop him and continued to swim deeper. "Are they ignoring me like this?" Qin Feng was surprised. These 3 had noticed him, but they acted like he didn't exist. "Are they confident that they can defeat me?" Chuckling, Qin Feng increased his speed and chased after them. With his current capabilities, even if he were to fight against someone who had opened 9 meridians, he would still be able to put up a fight. Those who were allowed to participate in the competition were all minors. He did not believe that anyone in this group could open 9 meridians before the age of 18. Therefore, he was not afraid of these 3 at all, even if they had some tricks up their sleeves. Slowly, Qin Feng understood why. The deeper he went, the more the water pressure increased. Gradually, he could feel a slight pain coming from his body. Looking at the 3 of them who were not affected in the slightest, Qin Feng was puzzled. With the strength of his fleshly body, he was definitely top-notch among the underaged ones. Even he found it somewhat strenuous, so why didn't the 3 of them feel anything? Suddenly, his gaze froze. He noticed that the 3 of them were wearing green armor under their black robes. The armor was emitting green light. It was obvious that it was a decent battle armor that could counteract the water pressure. Could they be the descendants of the three powerful clans? Qin Feng was shocked. Even the Su clan did not have this ability. It was obvious that these three were from a much higher background than the Su clan. In the city of Sin, only the three clans had a higher status than the Su clan. They were the Shao clan, the Long clan, the Wei clan, and the city leader's palace. The three of them didn't care about the spirit-dissolving pool and directly went to the bottom of the pool. They didn't need to think to know that there must be something more precious than the spirit-dissolving pool's suction force. Thinking of this, Qin Feng's heart heated up. Spiritual energy surged, protecting his body, and he quickly chased after them. "Miss, that fellow is chasing after us," a black-robed youth said to the black-robed girl in the middle. The black cloak rippled along with the undercurrent, revealing a devastatingly beautiful face. She had an oval-shaped face, willowy eyebrows, and large spirited eyes. Although she was still young, when she grew up, she would definitely be a great beauty that could cause the downfall of a country. "Miss, I'll go stop that guy," the black-robed youth said. "Ouyang Hua, you can't. That guy isn't easy to deal with," the girl said. "Besides, he doesn't have anything to protect him. He won't be able to reach the bottom." Hearing this, the two youths nodded. They had treasures that allowed them to withstand the water pressure, but that guy had nothing. How could he possibly dive deeper into the water? After descending for some distance, they discovered that Qin Feng was still following behind them. The three of them could no longer remain calm. How is this possible? It's already 100 meters. With his strength, how could he withstand such a strong water pressure? Ouyang Hua said with a face full of shock. Even the girl, Ouyang Jing, was in a daze. At this depth, without treasures to protect the body, even someone with 8 open meridians wouldn't be able to withstand it. How did Qin Feng do it? "Miss, you go get that treasure liquid. Leave him to us," Ouyang Hua said. Seeing Ouyang Jing hesitate, Ouyang Hua said, "Miss, don't worry. He is indeed very powerful, but that might not be the case in the water. After such a long time, the air stored in his body should be almost used up. Adding on the water pressure, his battle strength will be greatly reduced. You can guess from his red face. But we are different. We have the profound water cloak. We have enough air and can withstand the water pressure. If we still can't deal with him, then we will lose face as the elite disciples of the City Lord's mansion." Hearing this, Ouyang Jing nodded and said, "You guys be careful. Just delay him. Once I get the treasure liquid, we will immediately leave." Finished speaking, Ouyang Jing looked at the rapidly approaching Qin Feng and turned around to continue descending. Ouyang Hua and the other youth charged towards Qin Feng. Spirit energy surged as they attacked. Qin Feng leaned to the side and dodged the attack. He reached out to grab the other person, but he ignored the water resistance. Not only did he fail to grab the other person, but he was also unable to dodge and was hit in the shoulder. 7 open meridians. Qin Feng felt pain in his shoulder. Spirit energy whistled as he moved a distance away and looked at the two seriously. In the exchange just now, he was affected by the water resistance, but they weren't affected much. What was going on? Moreover, the air stored in his body was about to run out, but they didn't lack any. At this moment, he realized that the green armor was emitting a faint green light that wrapped around the two of them. Moreover, there were countless tiny bubbles emerging. It also has a breathing function. Qin Feng was shocked as he thought about what to do. 7 Meridians experts had no problem with the water pressure and air, but he was obstructed everywhere. How could he fight this battle? Miss is being too careful. Under such circumstances, this guy is no match for us. Ouyang Hua smiled and said, "Why don't we eliminate him?" "That's what I was thinking," the other youth said. The two of them attacked at the same time. Although their speed wasn't very fast, it was already very fast for Qin Feng. In addition, Qin Feng didn't have enough air, so he was soon at a disadvantage. Qin Feng was burning with anger. He could easily suppress the two of them, but due to various factors, he was beaten to the point where he couldn't fight back. Suddenly, his heart lit up as he quickly circulated the 100 Tribulations heaven-devouring art. It's indeed effective. Qin Feng was delighted. With the circulation of the 100 Tribulations heaven-devouring art, the surrounding pressure decreased significantly. Moreover, the devouring power could also devour the air in the water, providing him with oxygen. In an instant, Qin Feng solved two major problems. As the circulation of the 100 Tribulations heaven-devouring art sped up, the pressure decreased. In the end, he could no longer feel the pressure. It was no different from being on the ground. Qin Feng laughed. This 100 Tribulations heaven-devouring art was too heaven-defying. He rushed in front of Ouyang Hua and sent him flying with a punch. The latter's face was filled with shock as he looked at Lin Gu in disbelief. How did his speed suddenly become so fast? After sending Ouyang Hua flying, Qin Feng appeared in front of the other youth. With a whip kick, he lashed out at the youth's chest. The youth was instantly sent flying, with blood spurting out. The two of them looked at Qin Feng in a daze. They looked at each other and felt confused. How could Qin Feng's speed be so fast? It was as if he wasn't affected at all. What's going on? Qin Feng didn't give them time to think. He attacked. The two of them were no match for him. Their speed and strength were completely suppressed. Soon, they couldn't hold on. We are. I don't care who you are. If you don't leave, I'll kill you. Qin Feng sent Ouyang Hua flying with a punch. What a joke. No matter how high your status is, you have to follow the rules here. The two of them knew that Qin Feng was serious. They didn't dare to stay any longer. They quickly crushed their jade slips and left. Otherwise, they might really be killed by him. After dealing with the two of them, Qin Feng quickly sank. He found a pitch-black water cave. He hesitated for a moment before swimming in. Then, he quickly swam up. A few minutes later, a ray of light appeared. At the same time, the figure of the black-robed youth appeared in his sight. Ouyang Jing floated out of the water. Just as she was about to swim to the shore, her delicate body suddenly stiffened. A pair of hands slowly climbed from her waist to her chest. Then, they suddenly tightened. Chapter 16. Opening the 8th meridian. When she felt the strength of the two large hands on her chest, Ouyang Jing's entire body stiffened and her mind went blank. After a long while, she screamed and broke free. She quickly swam ashore and turned to glare at Qin Feng. Qin Feng was stunned and said in astonishment, "You are a woman?" Ouyang Jing's delicate body trembled. She gritted her teeth and said, "Can't you feel it?" Qin Feng looked at his hands and shook his head. "I really can't feel it." Ouyang Jing's charming face paled. This blow was a bit too big. "You did it on purpose." She gritted her small canine teeth and glared at Qin Feng. "I didn't do it on purpose," Qin Feng said seriously. "Although it's a bit of a blow, it's the truth. At first, I thought it was just a man with slightly developed chest muscles. If I didn't hear your voice, I wouldn't have thought of you as a woman." Ouyang Jing staggered back, her eyes wide open. She wanted to tear Qin Feng apart. Even if she wasn't fully developed, he shouldn't have said it out loud and analyzed it seriously. For a woman, the most painful and annoying thing was a man touching her chest and saying, "Dear, why are you facing me with your back?" Ouyang Jing was experiencing this now. If he was deliberately teasing her, she could accept it. But looking at his serious expression, there was no trace of teasing. He was telling the truth. Ignoring Ouyang Jing, Qin Feng climbed ashore and looked around. He found that this was a natural karst cave. The area wasn't large. Not far away, he found a small pool. To be precise, it was a small pool. Within the pool, there were bursts of white light. Qin Feng's eyes were burning as he quickly walked over. "You're not allowed to snatch it. It's mine." Ouyang Jing quickly blocked in front of Qin Feng. "Are you a match for me?" Qin Feng smiled. Ouyang Jing pouted. She naturally knew that for Qin Feng to appear here, Ouyang Hua and Ouyang Lu had already failed. "How could you possibly defeat them? Do you think they can beat me?" Qin Feng asked. Ouyang Jing's tone became sluggish as she said, "Diving so deep, not only do they have to worry about the lack of air, but they also have to divert their attention to resist the water pressure. Under such circumstances, how can two people with their strength not be damaged be unable to defeat you?" Indeed. Qin Feng smiled, walked around her, and walked towards the pool. With his intelligence, how could he not know that Ouyang Jing was baiting him? "Hey, you haven't answered my question." Ouyang Jing chased after him with a face full of curiosity. She really wanted to ask how he did it, but she knew that it was impossible to ask directly, so she said with certainty, "You can't beat them in the water. If you say you can't beat him, then you can't beat him. What else can I say?" Qin Feng shrugged, not falling for the trap. Ouyang Jing was stunned. This fellow was being looked down upon by her, yet he didn't want to refute at all. "All right, you have completed your task. This place has nothing to do with you," Qin Feng said. Ouyang Jing stared and said, "I was the one who discovered this place." "You were the one who discovered it, but can you defend it?" Qin Feng asked. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Qin Feng patted her shoulder and comforted her. "You have already done very well. Leave the rest to me." "You want to take it all for yourself, right?" Ouyang Jing pouted. Qin Feng didn't say anything. "My father is the city lord." Qin Feng was stunned and asked, "You are from the city lord's manor?" Ouyang Jing nodded and said proudly, "Are you afraid? Let me tell you, if you offend me, you won't have a good ending. You are actually from the city lord's manor, and you are even a little princess," Qin Feng secretly said. He thought that she was from the three strong races. He didn't expect her background to be even bigger than he thought. "So what if you are from the city lord's manor? In this trial, you have to follow the rules," Qin Feng said. Ouyang Jing stared at him. "You dare to ignore my existence?" With her status and appearance, the opposite sex she had interacted with were all respectful to her. Qin Feng actually dared to treat her like this. Ouyang Jing threatened, "Qin Feng, offending me won't bring you any benefits." "If I don't offend you, what benefits can I get from you?" Qin Feng asked and then said, "Don't use your status as the city lord's manor's little princess to pressure me. With your personal prestige, it won't affect your family's ranking. As long as I get a good ranking in the surface's top 10 competition, my family's status will rise. The city lord's manor will only use me. They won't be dissatisfied with the Qin family because of our conflict in the trial." Hearing this, Ouyang Jing laughed out loud. She pointed at Qin Feng and said with a smile, "Qin Feng, your wishful thinking is really good. Let's not ask if you have the qualifications to participate in the surface's top 10 competition. What advantages do you think you have compared to those adults? That's not the same as our competition. If you really participate, I can guarantee that you will be beaten until you doubt your life." Qin Feng didn't want to argue with her about this. He walked towards the pool. There was a fist-sized milky white liquid inside, and it wasn't diluted by the pool water. Spirit-gathering liquid. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. He actually found spirit-gathering liquid here. Spirit-gathering liquid was formed when the spiritual energy of heaven and earth reached a certain level. It was compressed by the earth's core and couldn't be released. It then turned into a liquid. This required an absolute amount of time to form. And according to the thickness of the color, Qin Feng concluded that this spirit-gathering liquid was formed after 100 years of compression. To cultivators, this was an incredible tonic. "We'll split it in half," Ouyang Jing said. Qin Feng's face sank. "Miss Ouyang, I've always liked to use peaceful means before resorting to force. I've reached the end of my courtesy." Ouyang Jing was about to speak, but when she saw Qin Feng's eyes narrowed, she immediately shrunk her neck and didn't dare to say anything. She almost forgot that this guy was a cold-blooded demon who killed without batting an eyelid. Seeing this, Qin Feng snorted and stretched out his hand. Spirit force coiled around his palm, and he grabbed a large amount of spirit-gathering liquid. Just as he was about to consume it, he suddenly glanced at Ouyang Jing, who was looking at him from the side. Seeing her smacking her lips, Qin Feng couldn't bear it, so he gave her a thumb-sized amount of spirit-gathering liquid and said, "Don't say that I'm the only one who ate it." Ouyang Jing was about to thank him, but when she saw the little amount of spirit-gathering liquid, her excitement instantly cooled down. "Thank you." After thanking him without any sincerity, Ouyang Jing took the little amount of spirit-gathering liquid, walked to the side, consumed it, and began to refine it. Seeing this, Qin Feng didn't hesitate and drank it all in one gulp. Immediately after, the 100 calamity heaven-devouring art circulated, devouring the spiritual energy and accelerating the absorption. Although it was only the size of a fist, the spiritual energy it contained was several times more than the spiritual energy in the entire spirit pool. Qin Feng could feel that the pores all over his body were rapidly opening, and his flesh and blood were surging as he crazily absorbed the spirit-gathering liquid. The spiritual energy in his body increased and finally reached the limit. With a muffled sound in his body, Qin Feng opened the 8th spirit meridian as he wished, becoming an 8 meridian expert. At this time, only 2/3 of the spirit-gathering liquid had been refined. When he finished refining all of the spirit-gathering liquid, his strength had risen to the peak of the 8 meridian, and he was only a step away from the 9 meridian expert. Qin Feng opened his eyes and felt the stronger power in his body. He couldn't help but smile with relief. Chapter 17. Shocking Scorching Feng nodded in satisfaction as he became an 8 meridian expert, and his spiritual energy was not weak at all. Seeing that Ouyang Jing was still refining there, he turned his head and began to size up the cave. A place that could produce spirit-gathering liquid was definitely not an ordinary place. But after looking around for a while, he was disappointed. There was nothing here other than the spirit-gathering liquid. Soon, Ouyang Jing finished refining. Her aura had obviously increased by a lot, reaching the peak of 6 meridians. She did not really break through. After all, she was still young. To reach the peak of 6 meridians at the age of 16, her talent was considered good. "What are you looking at? It's all your fault." Seeing Qin Feng looking at her, Ouyang Jing glared. "You knew that there was spirit-gathering liquid here, so you should have known in advance." Qin Feng asked. "Since we are all enjoying life together, we should also share the information." It would have been better if Qin Feng did not say it, but Ouyang Jing was even angrier. He only gave her a little bit, and he had the nerve to say that it was a shared resource. "There's only spirit-gathering liquid here, nothing else." Ouyang Jing snorted, understanding Qin Feng's intention. He wanted to dig out if there were any other treasures from her. "Let me tell you, there's really nothing here. My father didn't take the spirit-gathering liquid away at that time as a test for you participants. If someone can find it and take it from our hands—" Her words came to an abrupt end. Ouyang Jing covered her mouth and saw Qin Feng's expression that said, "I know." She wished she could slap herself for speaking the truth. "So this is the final test. Fortunately, I wasn't shocked by you at that time." Qin Feng shook his head and laughed. "Speaking of which, your ability to fool people is really not bad. If it were someone else, they would really fall for your trick." Ouyang Jing was so angry that her eyes were round. She pointed at Qin Feng and scolded, Qin Feng, I won't let you go. Just you wait. After saying that, she crushed the jade slip and disappeared. Qin Feng touched his nose, not taking Ouyang Jing's last threat to heart. Since it's over here, it's time for me to return. By the time Qin Feng returned to the surface of the water, the spiritual power in the spirit pool had almost been completely absorbed by everyone. Although their strength hadn't made any breakthroughs, their auras had become much stronger. Especially after the baptism, their foundations had become much more solid. Other than Qin Feng, Qin Yi and Qin Cancan benefited the most. The former had successfully opened his sixth spirit vein. I'm afraid Brother Qin is the biggest beneficiary of this selection. Yelin smiled. Although he could not sense the spiritual energy fluctuations in Qin Feng's body, with his strength and talent, as well as the fact that he was in the best place, his baptism would definitely be the best out of everyone. Qin Feng smiled and rubbed his chin. He looked at Yelin, Su Yuan, and the others and asked, How many points do you have? Yelin, Su Yuan, and the others' faces froze when they saw Qin Feng's eyes glowing. Su Yuan smiled and said, You're not thinking about stealing our points, are you? That's what I'm thinking. Qin Feng nodded and said seriously, After all, I have to make sure that my points are in the first place. Yelin, Su Yuan, and the others rolled their eyes. Just based on the fact that you've eliminated so many people who can surpass you in points. How many points does Qin Feng have? 238, Qin Feng said. What the F*** CK? Yelin, Su Yuan, and the others were shocked. 283 points. There were only 500 people in total, and he actually took half of them. However, after thinking about it, they understood. The points of the 100 people in the north were probably his. With so many people eliminated here, it was normal for him to have such a high score. Brother Qin is already in the first place. Don't tell me you're still thinking about my 13 points. Yelin said. After knowing Qin Feng's points, he was no longer worried. That's all you have? Qin Feng was surprised. Yelin's face twitched. What do you mean by that? Do you think everyone is as freakish as you? You single-handedly destroyed an entire realm and eliminated 2 powerful races. Aside from you, the highest score here is Su Yuan from the Su clan. She has 19 points, Yelin said. I see. Qin Feng nodded and said, Then your points are useless to me. Everyone rolled their eyes. They were useless in the first place, okay? Look, it's time. We've all passed the preliminaries, someone exclaimed. Above them, a giant vortex appeared, and a bit of suction force spread out. This was the sign of the end. Once the 3-day time limit was up, everyone would leave this space. Haha! We've all passed the preliminaries. People shouted excitedly. As the suction force of the vortex increased, one figure after another was sucked into it in the central square of the city of Sin. The people who had waited for 3 days were energized. They looked at the distorted space in the center of the square. The teleportation array had been activated, and those people were about to return. Everyone was discussing who would perform well. They were discussing who would have the highest score. Who eliminated the Su family, the Gu family, the House of Bai and the Lu family? To be able to do so, it must be someone from the Su clan. Everyone was discussing and thought that the Su clan was the most capable. At the time, people from these clans were eliminated one after another, which caused quite a stir. After all, they were all powerful clans, especially the Su family and the Gu family. They were both in the top 10 clans and were already seeded contestants. It was too surprising that they were suddenly eliminated. But the news did not spread. Those who were eliminated all returned to their own clans. The Su clan can't possibly target 4 clans at the same time. Someone objected. The Su clan was indeed the most powerful clan, but to target 4 clans at the same time, it was impossible for them to succeed. In the end, everyone agreed that it was the Sioux clan, the Ye family, and the other slave clans that eliminated the Sioux family and the other clans. On the square there was a bright light. A moment later, the remaining dozens of people appeared on the square. Well, a little more than I expected. But since you have all passed the trial, you are qualified to enter the City Lord's Mansion's training camp. Mu Heng looked at Qin Feng and the others with a smile and said, "Come, all of you, submit your jade slips. We will have someone to count them. The one with the highest score will be the champion of this selection." Spiritual light flashed, and jade slips floated around Mu Heng. He narrowed his eyes and kept looking at them. Sioux clan, Su Yuan, 19 points. Ye family, Yi Lin, 13 points. Zhou clan, Zhou Qin, 8 points. Humph, not only did Qin Feng injure his own clan, but he also eliminated my son and the others. Big brother, I want Qin Feng to give me an explanation later, Qin Zhong said in an unfriendly tone. Indeed, people like Qin Feng who destroy the unity of the clans must be severely punished. But if he can get a good title, his merits can offset his fault. Him? I don't know where he hid for 3 days before he was lucky enough to pass the selection. Qin Zhen glanced at them indifferently and said, Xiao Feng must have his reasons for eliminating Changming and the others. As for the truth, we will know when he comes back and confronts Changming and the others. Qin Changming, Qin Hai, and the others shrank their neck. They didn't say anything about what happened inside. They only said how Qin Feng disregarded the clan's interests and eliminated them. Sure enough, the Sioux clan not only has an individual with the highest score, but also the overall score. All the clans tried to curry favor with them. Only a few clans who knew the truth looked ashen. Qin Feng, when he saw Qin Feng's jade slip, Mu Heng was about to speak, but he suddenly paused and rubbed his eyes as if he had seen a ghost. How is this possible? Everyone was attracted by his reaction. Someone asked loudly, Elder Mu, what's wrong? Mu Heng stared for a long time before retracting his gaze. He took a deep breath and said loudly, Qin Feng, 283 points. Chapter 18. A Wish Silence. The entire square was dead silent. Many people rubbed their ears, thinking that they had misheard. Qin Feng actually obtained 283 points. How was this possible? Could it be that he had eliminated half of the people? Elder Mu, you must be mistaken. Someone from the Sioux family said. That's right, Elder Mu. Is there something wrong with the jade slip? Did this kid cheat? I think it's very likely that he cheated. Otherwise, how could he have such a high score? There were more than 500 contestants in total, and Qin Feng alone accounted for more than half of them. Didn't that mean that he had eliminated more than half of the contestants? That was not realistic. The main reason was that Qin Feng gave people the impression that he was mediocre and had no outstanding performance. No one dared to believe this result. Do you think this old man's eyesight is bad? Elder Mu's face darkened. He scanned the crowd and said, What exactly happened inside can be revealed now. Let them decide whether Qin Feng's results are valid or not. Mu Heng said this because he had his suspicions. In an instant, all eyes were on the dozens of people in the middle of the square. How do you think Qin Feng got so many points? Did he cheat? Someone asked loudly. No, someone replied. Could it be that he cheated and attracted a lot of spirit beasts, forcing the others to crush the jade slips? No. That means the jade slip has a counting error. Everyone was talking one after another. They were all guessing that Qin Feng had used some trick to get such a high score. Neither. Yelin stood up and said loudly, Qin Feng was teleported to the northern realm and eliminated everyone there. Next to the spirit pool, he eliminated the Su family, Go family, Lo family, and the House of Bai. Qin Feng's points were all obtained by himself. How is this possible? Did he use some despicable method? Someone asked, unwilling to accept this. No, he defeated everyone with his own strength, Yelin said. The entire plaza instantly quieted down. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was too unrealistic for one person to defeat so many people. Yes, yes. Mu Heng laughed heartily and said, all of them are correct. Seeing that everyone was confused, Mu Heng explained, do you remember that more than 100 people were eliminated not long after the preliminaries started? Everyone stared blankly for a moment before recalling that it had caused a commotion. After all, it had been a large-scale elimination. However, everyone had guessed that those people had been unlucky and had been sent to a dangerous area with a high concentration of spirit beasts. From the looks of it, that was not the case at all. It was Qin Feng who had eliminated them. Just thinking about it made their scalps go numb. That was more than 100 people. How did Qin Feng do it? On the third day of the selection, the Su family, the Gu family, the Lu family, and the House of Bai were eliminated one after another, Mu Heng said. Everyone was silent. They didn't dare to think about it. Qin Feng eliminating people from his plane was already unacceptable enough. They didn't expect that he would also eliminate those clans. Even if everyone already believed it, it was still hard to imagine. How was this possible? Those were two powerful clans. Judging from the time of elimination, they were eliminated almost at the same time. In other words, Qin Feng had attacked 4 clans at the same time and eliminated them all. Seeing that everyone was silent and nodding, Mu Heng looked at Qin Feng and asked, is that the truth? Yes. Qin Feng nodded. Boom. There was an instant uproar. This person had admitted it himself. What else was there to say? How did you do it? Mu Heng asked. May I ask if you are questioning me? Qin Feng asked calmly. Of course not. Mu Heng shook his head and said loudly, the first place of this selection is Qin Feng from the Qin family. There are still objections from the various clans. Yes. The Su family, the Gu family, the House of Bai, and the Lu family stood up at the same time. Some disciples from our clans have not returned yet. Everyone was shocked. There were still people who had not returned. Didn't that mean everyone looked at Qin Feng? They were so shocked that they were speechless. Mu Heng was also stunned. He counted the number of people and found that there were indeed some people missing. There was only one possibility if they had not returned. Those people were all dead. Seeing that those clans were glaring at Qin Feng, Mu Heng understood. He frowned and looked at Qin Feng. Did you kill those people? Yes. Qin Feng nodded. Everyone was in an uproar and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. Why did you kill them? Mu Heng asked. Qin Feng was expressionless. He asked calmly, may I ask why you gave us the jade slip? Of course it's to escape when you encounter danger, Mu Heng replied. If someone thinks that I won't dare to kill them and refuses to leave because of their noble status, what should I do? Qin Feng asked with a smile. Mu Heng was stunned. Everyone present was stunned. Rules are rules. If everyone uses their status and identity to oppress others, then what's the point of the preliminaries? The selections are for elites with ability, not trash with status and no strength. No one could refute Qin Feng's words. How dare you say that our clan's disciples are trash? Someone from the Su family said coldly. Qin Feng sneered. If your Su family can find someone among the miners who can exchange 3 moves with me, then I'll admit that I'm trash. The Gu family, the House of Bai, and the Lu family. You can send people or come at me together. I will use my actions to prove in front of everyone here whether I, Qin Feng, am trash or the disciples of your clans are trash. Qin Feng's harsh words echoed in the square. No one from the clans responded. They already knew the truth about the spiritual pool from their own disciples. No one responded. Qin Feng sneered, If you don't dare, then shut up. I gave them a chance, but they were greedy for the spiritual pool's baptism and didn't want to leave. Therefore, I killed them. It's not my fault. You are lying. The clans were shaking in anger. Qin Feng didn't want to waste time with them. Elder Mu, we ask that you punish this murderous demon and give justice to the children who died. Mu Hing frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a faint voice that contained a terrifying amount of spiritual energy resonated. Do you think the rules of the city leader's palace can be broken so easily? A silhouette suddenly appeared in the square. Spiritual energy rippled out of him and continued to expand. Everyone at the scene felt suffocated. Qin Feng's body tensed up. He raised his head and looked at the middle-aged man. He thought to himself, this is the #1 powerhouse of the city of Sin, Ouyang Qintian? Leader of the city. Mu Hing quickly bowed. Leader of the city. The leaders of the clans all bowed while the others knelt down. Any battle will result in bloodshed. This is unavoidable. We have already given everyone a way out. But since they didn't want to leave, they will have to pay the price, Ouyang Qingtian said. Ouyang Qingtian's thunderous voice shook the eardrums of the people from the various great clans. It was a warning and deterrence. All the clans surrendered and no longer dared to object. Everyone rise. Ouyang Qingtian said softly, remember, only strength can give you the right to speak. If you don't have strength, then shut your mouths. After saying that, Ouyang Qingtian looked at Qin Feng with a hint of admiration in his eyes. He said, you're undoubtedly the #1 among the miners. In addition to the reward you deserve, I can also fulfill one of your wishes. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. The city lord had the intention of cherishing talent. Since ancient times, there weren't many people who were so lucky to be bestowed such a gift. There was no joy on Qin Feng's face. His indifferent words caused everyone present to be stunned. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. Ganoderma lucidum. On the square, everyone stared blankly at Qin Feng, not understanding why he would make such a decision. If a miner were to participate in the surface's top 10 competition, wouldn't that be courting death? It was undeniable that Qin Feng could defeat so many people. He was indeed the best among the miners. However, the top 10 competition on the surface was a battle between adults. Those people were older than him and had started cultivating a few years earlier. Their strength was bound to be stronger than his. No one understood why Qin Feng would make such a suicidal decision. Is it because of the Qin family? With your talent, the city lord's mansion will definitely put you in an important position. You don't have to do this. Mu Hing sighed in his heart. He was naturally fond of talents like Qin Feng. In the sky, Ouyang Qingtian looked at Qin Feng and said, do you know that the top 10 competition on the surface is related to the ranking of the top 10 clans? In the arena, no one will go easy on you just because you are underage. They will all fight to the death for their own clans. I know. Qin Feng nodded. There are no protective measures in the top 10 tournament on the surface. Life and death are boundless. Ouyang Qingtian stared at Qin Feng and was silent for a while before he said, are you sure you want to participate? I'm sure, Qin Feng said firmly. Hearing this, Ouyang Qingtian didn't say anything else, but his expression was much more indifferent. He waved his hand and said, allow Qin Feng from the Qin family to participate in the surface top 10 competition. After saying that, Ouyang Qingtian turned around and left. Little fellow, you're too reckless. Mu Hing walked over and whispered to Qin Feng, the city lord is looking for a disciple. If you become the city lord's disciple, will you still have to worry about the status of the Qin family? Qin Feng was stunned, then he shook his head and said, I want to protect my family with my strength, not with my glamorous identity. Mu Hing was stunned. He saw determination in Qin Feng's eyes. Then, he shook his head. Qin Feng was a young man after all. He was arrogant and didn't know that there was always someone better than him. Mu Hing shook his head and did not say anything else. The selection competition had come to an end. Those who passed would be able to enter the City Lord's Manor's training camp. This was a great honor for all the families. Some people were happy while others were sad. Naturally, the Qin family was the first to experience both joy and sorrow. At this moment, they didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Qin Feng's performance had shaken the entire city. He was known as the #1 person among the miners. To the Qin family, this was undoubtedly great news. However, he was about to participate in the Surface's top 10 competition, so the Qin family couldn't bring themselves to be happy. That day in the Qin family's hall, Qin Feng had said that he would participate in the Surface's top 10 competition. Everyone had thought that he was just being loyal and didn't take it seriously. Who would have thought that it would actually come true? If they had known earlier, they would have definitely stopped him. With Qin Feng's talent, given a few more years, there was no need to worry about him not rising up. However, it was all too late. The City Lord had spoken, and no one could change his mind. Alas! In the Qin family's meeting hall, a group of people sat in a circle and looked at each other with bitter smiles on their faces. "Little Feng, you were too impulsive," the Grand Elder said, his tone carrying a hint of blame. "Little Feng, you should have at least discussed this matter with us." Even Qin Zhen spoke up. Qin Feng shrugged and said, "Didn't I tell you that day? Who knew that you were telling the truth?" Qin Zhen was stunned, and then he smiled bitterly. He really didn't know what to say. Qin Feng didn't want to talk too much about this matter, because no matter how much he promised, no one would believe him. He said, "During the selections, Qin Changming teamed up with Su Shaw of the Su family to eliminate me, so I eliminated him. I also heard from him that second uncle had secretly sent people to contact the Su family. Whether or not it's true, I'm not sure." After saying this, Qin Feng left the meeting hall. Before he even left, the sound of a fierce argument could be heard from inside. Walking in the family, no one dared to point at him behind his back. Everyone was respectful, especially the younger generation. During the selections, Qin Feng's achievements had already won everyone over. Moreover, he still wanted to participate in the Surface's top 10 competition. Everyone knew why he wanted to participate. It was because he wanted to contribute to the family. No matter the final result, this was enough to win everyone's respect. Opening the door, Qin Feng looked up and saw Qin Yao sitting on the steps, her hands supporting her chin as she smiled at him. "Big sister, why are you here?" Qin Feng hurried over and helped Qin Yao up. "I'm here to see our family's great hero." Qin Yao touched Qin Feng's head and smiled. Hearing this, Qin Feng shook his head and smiled, and said, "Compared to Big Sister, I'm not a great hero. You'll surpass Big Sister." Qin Yao smiled. Qin Feng was stunned and fell silent. Although Qin Yao didn't show anything, how could he not know her unwillingness and helplessness? Originally, she was the most outstanding genius and should be the center of attention, standing at the peak. Now, even walking normally was a problem. This kind of difference, even if Qin Yao didn't like to compete, it would be difficult for her to accept. "Big sister, is there really no way to treat your injury?" Qin Feng asked in a low voice. Although this would touch on Qin Yao's pain, he had to ask clearly. In the past, he didn't have the strength and qualifications, but now he had the demon eye. Perhaps there was a way to treat Qin Yao. "My meridians are broken and my spirit veins are dried up. The family has sent people to take a look at me, but it's useless." Qin Yao shook her head and smiled. Looking at the strong and indifferent Qin Yao, Qin Feng didn't feel good in his heart. "Old devil, do you have any ideas?" Qin Feng held Qin Yao's hand and asked in his mind. For her body to be destroyed to this extent, the person who did this is indeed very ruthless. Qin Feng's heart shook and his hatred towards Cloudy Days increased a bit. Even the old devil said so. It was clear how serious Qin Yao's injury was. Is there a way to save her? There is a way, but the heavenly treasures needed are too hard to find. The old devil said. Qin Feng's heart was excited. As long as there was a way, he would overcome any difficulties. After bidding farewell to Qin Yao, Qin Feng came to the Heaven Treasure Building. This was the City Lord's Mansion's biggest medicine trading center. 60 to 70% of the medicine in the city of Sin came from here. The heavenly demon said that if he wanted to cure Qin Yao's injury, he could only refine the regeneration pill. With its regenerative properties, he could heal Qin Yao's injury. However, the regeneration pill not only required a large amount of supplementary ingredients, it also required 10 main ingredients. Among the rewards he received, there was a stalk of xianhuang grass. It was one of the main ingredients, so he was still missing 9. Qin Feng searched for half a day, but couldn't find the other main ingredient. Is it really that hard? Qin Feng was helpless. Of the 10 main ingredients, aside from the xianhuang grass, 100 spirit mushroom, and bodhi roots, he had only heard of the others. As for the last 3, he had never even heard of them. However, just as he was about to leave, he glanced at an inconspicuous corner. His eyes immediately lit up. There was a small stall, and in the corner of the stall, there was 100 spirit mushroom. Qin Feng quickly walked over, his eyes shining even brighter. Looking at the color of the 100 spirit mushroom, it was at least a few hundred years old. Its medicinal effects were definitely good. Boss, how much is the 100 spirit mushroom? Qin Feng's eyes were shining. 50,000 gold coins. The old stall owner raised his head, revealing a mouthful of old yellow teeth. So expensive? Boss, can you make it cheaper? Young man, this 100 spirit mushroom is 500 years old. 50,000 is not much. The old man smiled. Qin Feng grinned. He didn't even have 5,000 gold coins. The rewards from the City Lord's mansion could be used to offset the price, but he didn't have them with him. But it wasn't easy to find the 100 spirit mushroom. Qin Feng couldn't give up. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, 50,000. However, at this time, an extremely untimely voice faintly rang. Chapter 20. You are really useless. Qin Feng turned his head. When he saw the person who spoke, his face immediately darkened. A group of people walked over. There were both men and women, and they were all dressed in luxurious clothes. It was obvious that they were people of high status. Qin Feng didn't recognize the young man beside him, but Qin Feng couldn't be more familiar with him. It was Su Shua, who was eliminated by him. Su Shua looked at Qin Feng with a strange smile on his face. "Boss, I want the 100 Lingji mushroom." Su Li took out a bag of gold coins and threw it on the table. "Sorry, I already bought the 100 Lingji mushroom," Qin Feng said and took the 100 Lingji mushroom in his hand. Su Li glanced at Qin Feng and smiled disdainfully. He ignored him and said to the old stall owner, "You took my money, so shouldn't you give it to me? But I don't have anything in my hand. Did you not give it to me, or did you give it to someone else?" As he spoke, Su Li deliberately glanced at Qin Feng. The old stall owner understood what he meant and quickly nodded. "If that's the case, then there's nothing to say." Su Li walked in front of Qin Feng and tidied his clothes. Then he reached out and said indifferently, "Give me my stuff." Qin Feng looked at him coldly and said, "I bought it first. But I paid first." Su Li spread his hands and said with a fake smile, "Qin Feng, I advise you to be honest. Don't think that you can look down on others just because you won the title of #1 among the miners." That little bit of deterrence of yours can only scare children. In front of me, it's nothing. If you don't give it to me, then don't blame me for being rude. Qin Feng put away the 100 lingji mushroom. He knew that the Su family deliberately made trouble for him. He couldn't get through this without doing something. Seeing this, Su Li raised his eyebrows and the smile on his face became brighter. Su Shua's smile was brighter than a flower. He was really worried that Qin Feng would just hand over the 100 lingji mushroom. That way, they wouldn't have a reason to make a move. Qin Feng's actions were exactly what he wanted. Although he knew that Qin Feng had already opened the 7th meridian, Su Li was an expert who had opened the 8th meridian. Moreover, Su Mei was also an expert who had opened the 8th meridian. Qin Feng was going to be humiliated by them today. Big brother Su Li, didn't I tell you? You can't reason with this kind of person. You can only use your fists to let him know that the 6th strongest clan, the Su family, is not to be casually provoked, Su Shua said from the side. Yes, he is indeed arrogant. Su Mei laughed as she looked at Qin Feng. You brat, I really don't know where your confidence comes from. Do you really think that you're invincible just because you were in the limelight in the selection? Su Mei was very beautiful, but the way she spoke made people very uncomfortable. It was obvious that she was looking down on them. Yes. Su Shua nodded. He walked towards Qin Feng with a sneer on his face and said in a low voice, Brat, so you have a day like this. I've said before that I will return the humiliation you gave me 10-fold, no, 100-fold. Qin Feng looked at him coldly as a cold glint flitted across his eyes. Are you looking for a beating again? Su Shua was alarmed, but when he remembered that Su Li and Su Mei were behind him, his fear of Qin Feng lessened. He did not believe that Qin Feng would dare to make a move on him here. His hand slowly reached towards Qin Feng. Seeing that the latter did not respond, Su Shua thought that he was scared stiff and thus became even bolder. However, just as his hand was about to touch Qin Feng's clothes, 2 fingers clamped onto his wrist like a pair of iron pliers. Su Shua was stunned. He raised his head and met Qin Feng's emotionless pitch-black eyes. Qin Feng, what are you doing? Su Shua shouted. Those eyes had left a shadow in his heart. Ah! However, his words had just left his mouth when he let out a blood-curdling scream. The hand that Qin Feng had clamped down powerlessly was hanging down. Evidently, his wrist had been broken. Reckless fool. Qin Feng sent him flying with a kick. Our Su Shua clutched his hand as he howled in pain. Brat, you're courting death. Upon seeing this, Su Li's expression darkened. He quickly rushed in front of Qin Feng and punched out with his fist, bringing with it astral winds as it smashed towards Qin Feng's head. From the howling wind, it was clear that Su Li was not going to show any mercy. Qin Feng's lips curled into a mocking smile. He waved his hand and deflected Su Li's attack. Then, he abruptly turned his body sideways and slammed into Su Li's chest. With Qin Feng's current strength and the strength of his body, even a 9-channel expert would have to be careful when dealing with such a ferocious attack. Su Li, on the other hand, had been careless and did not have the slightest bit of defense. Thus, he was directly sent flying. Thus, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the 8-channel Su Li was sent flying by the 7-channel Qin Feng. Qin Feng had not revealed his strength yet. Su Li flew 6 to 7 meters before coming to a stop. As he violently vomited a mouthful of blood, his face instantly turned pale and his aura withered. Everyone present was dumbfounded. What was going on? Su Li was so easily defeated by Qin Feng. Swish! A cold glint flashed as Su Mei's longsword pierced towards Qin Feng's heart. Qin Feng used the body-changing steps and appeared 5 meters to the left of Su Mei. By the time she turned her head, Qin Feng had disappeared again. This time, he directly appeared in front of Su Mei and reached out with his hand as fast as lightning. Su Mei's pupils constricted. Her opponent's attack was too fast. Even if she reacted, her body could not keep up. Thus, under the startled cries of the crowd, Qin Feng grabbed her by the neck and lifted her up like a little chick. However, she was not an ordinary person. She withdrew her longsword and swept it towards Qin Feng's neck. Swish! However, Qin Feng was faster than her. He grabbed Su Mei's wrist with lightning speed and exerted force. Su Mei cried out in pain and let go of her longsword. On the stage, the Su family members were dumbfounded. Su Li and Su Mei had been defeated just like that? How was this possible? They were one level higher than Qin Feng. How could they not even withstand a single move? Su Shua was dumbfounded. He was dumbfounded as he watched everything unfold. Even now, he was still in a daze. He knew that Qin Feng was very strong, but he did not know that he was strong to such a frightening extent. How can your speed be so fast? Su Mei said with difficulty. Qin Feng smiled coldly. Although the body exchanging steps was not a high-level battle technique, its strength depended on the person using it. Qin Feng's comprehension of the body exchanging steps had already reached the pinnacle. If he used it fully, that ghostly speed would be something that even a 9th Meridian elite would have to treat seriously. Against these two, he did not really make a move at all. Qin Feng swung his arm and flung Su Mei away. He shook his head and said, "You two are really just trash." His tone was not deliberately mocking. Instead, it was a natural tone because he was disappointed that his opponents were not strong enough. It was precisely because of this that Su Li and Su Mei were so angry that their faces were red. They struggled to stand up and glared at Qin Feng. "Stop looking for trouble. This is just a lesson for you. The next time I make a move, it won't be so simple." Qin Feng's eyes slowly narrowed. Su Li and Su Mei's bodies trembled unnaturally. In the end, they did not dare to say a word. Seeing this, Qin Feng did not stay any longer and turned to leave. However, at this moment, the old stall owner's trembling voice sounded. Chapter 21. Ouyang Shi. Qin Feng's face twitched. Damn, he really forgot about this. Turning around, Qin Feng smiled awkwardly. I didn't bring enough money with me. I'll go back and get it now. Sure, but can you leave the 100 Lingji mushroom first? The old stall owner said. Do you think I'll cheat you on this little bit of money? You don't look like a rich person from the way you dress. The old stall owner muttered softly. Qin Feng rolled his eyes. Even if he didn't have money, he could still get this amount of money by borrowing from all over the place. Qin Feng, you're really funny. You don't have money and you still have the nerve to buy things. Su Li laughed loudly and walked over. He said disdainfully, if you don't have money, then don't blame others for buying it. I admit defeat just now, but don't tell me you don't know the rules of the Treasure Heaven Pavilion. Money and goods have always been settled. No one has ever dared to cause trouble here. You said you bought it first, sure, but please pay. If you can't pay, then it's natural for others to buy it. Su Li weighed the money bag in his hand and looked at Qin Feng proudly. Little brother, there is indeed such a rule here. We don't accept credit. If you don't have money, then please don't disturb this old man's business. The old stall owner said. Qin Feng was expressionless, but his heart twitched. How could he be willing to give up the 100 Lingji mushroom just like that? However, just as Qin Feng was at a loss, a soft voice suddenly came from the side. The Treasure Heaven Pavilion doesn't accept credit, but that's only for normal customers. If it's a VIP, then it's a different story. Qin Feng turned around and saw a tall and extremely beautiful woman walking over. Even if he didn't have any concept of beautiful, he was still stunned by this woman. The number one beauty of the city of Sin, Ouyang Shi. Qin Feng didn't know this person, but that didn't mean he didn't know her. the #1 beauty of the city of Sin, the eldest daughter of the city lord. Most of the males only saw her heavenly beauty, but others saw more. Ouyang she started to come into contact with the family's business at the age of 12. At the age of 14, she took charge of the Treasure Heaven building. At the age of 16, she increased the profits of the Treasure Heaven building by 3 folds, allowing the Treasure Heaven building to develop into the #1 medicinal herb trading market in Sin City. Not only that, but she was also the commander of the Red Banner Iron Regiment, which was one of the city's 3 main guard armies. It was said that when she first joined the Red Banner Iron Regiment, many people were unhappy with her, but in less than a year, the entire regiment was under her control. In the eyes of countless male animals, she was the embodiment of wealth, the symbol of power, and in short, she was the perfect goddess in everyone's heart. From the little kids who had just learned how to run to the old men who didn't know if they could do it, everyone was infatuated with her. However, it was said that until now, no one had been able to pluck this pearl that could cause one's blood to swell. The moment Ouyang she appeared, she immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even the old stall owner swallowed his saliva. Pavilion Master Ouyang. Su Li and the others quickly lowered their heads. Facing such a person, they didn't even dare to blaspheme her. Ouyang she walked over with a wisp of fragrance. She stopped in front of Qin Feng and said with a smile, "Little guy, don't you have the gold card that our Heaven Treasure Pavilion gave you? Why are you being so low-key?" Qin Feng was confused and asked, "When did I have a gold card? Weren't you first place in the selection? The gold card is one of the rewards. There are already 100,000 gold coins inside." Ouyang she said with surprise, "Didn't you see it?" Qin Feng slapped his thigh and said with annoyance, "I really didn't notice it. But even if I did, I don't have it on me right now." "It's fine. Next time when you have time, you can use the card to pay." Ouyang she said. Qin Feng was very happy in his heart. There was actually a gold card with 100,000 gold coins inside. This was like a pie falling from the sky. But he really didn't notice it. Did he not notice it? But now was not the time to think so much. Qin Feng asked, "Can I take the 100 Lingji mushroom away now?" "Of course." Ouyang she nodded and said, "But you have a gold card now. You need to register and change your information to Gold VIP." "No problem. For this kind of substantial good thing, Qin Feng would definitely cooperate." Just like this, Qin Feng followed Ouyang she slowly upstairs under everyone's dumbfounded gazes. Su Li and the others were dumbfounded. Their eyeballs almost popped out. This is too miraculous. Arriving at the VIP lounge, Qin Feng said impatiently, "Please change me to Gold VIP." Heaven Treasure Pavilion had 3 major VIP cards: silver, gold, and diamond. With the gold card, not only would one have the priority to make a reservation, one could also get a 20% discount. Most importantly, one could pay in installment. If Qin Feng had this card, then he wouldn't have to worry about the medicinal ingredient. He could even use Heaven Treasure Pavilion's channels to find the remaining 8 main ingredient. Ouyang Qi sat on the leather seat, which vividly displayed her curvy body. She blinked her big eyes and looked at Qin Feng. "What's wrong? Don't you need to register?" Qin Feng asked. "Little brother, we can do other things like register. We are not in a hurry." Ouyang she stretched and said lazily. Hearing that, Qin Feng's face instantly turned ugly and said, "Miss Ouyang, I have a gold card, so I should register my information and identity. This is my right. I hope you don't delay it." As for other things, let's talk about it after changing my identity. Ouyang Shi's rosy lips twitched. She just wanted to tease him on a whim, but she didn't expect him to seriously refuse. One had to know that if it was another man, they would have fainted from happiness. Seeing Qin Feng like that, Ouyang Shi knew that he was a very boring person. She waved her hand and said, You can go. Go back and quickly gather the money for the 100 lingji. When Qin Feng heard that, he wasn't happy and said, Miss Ouyang, I have a gold card. You really think you have a gold card? Ouyang, she interrupted Qin Feng's words. Qin Feng was startled. What did she mean? Didn't she say that he had a gold card? She even said that it was the reward for the first place of the qualifier. I said that to give you some face. I don't want you to be so embarrassed in front of others. Ouyang, she said. Qin Feng was stunned. He felt that he had fallen from heaven to hell. This was too much of a scam. Could this kind of joke be made so casually? Those with a weak heart would probably fall asleep immediately. So, I don't have a gold card at all, nor do I have 100,000? Qin Feng asked unwillingly. Yes. Ouyang, she nodded and said, so what you need to do now is to think of a way to gather the money for the 100 lingji. Thank you for your reminder. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He turned and walked out. But just as he was about to open the door, he suddenly paused. After pausing for a second or two, he turned and walked back. In the end, he sat opposite Ouyang Shi. Ouyang Shi was startled and asked, Do you have anything else? It should be that you have something else. Qin Feng smiled slightly. He crossed his fingers and placed them on the table. He smiled faintly and said, I think Miss Ouyang shouldn't be so free that you even have to care about such a small matter. Speak, what are your intentions? Chapter 22. Preparation before the competition. Qin Feng's return made Ouyang Shi slightly stunned, but his tone as if he had seen through everything made Ouyang Shi's heart tremble. However, as a professional, she naturally wouldn't show it. The smile on her face didn't fade as she said, Little brother, to be able to think of this, you do have some ability. Qin Feng shrugged and didn't say anything. He just stared at Qin Feng. If it was someone else, I wouldn't care, but you're different. Ouyang, she looked at Qin Feng with a smile and said, Do you know why? Because I got first place in the selection? Qin Feng asked. The only thing that made people remember him was his performance in the selection. Other than that, he didn't think there was anything else that Ouyang she cared about. You're only half right. Ouyang she nodded slightly, then shook her head and said, The selection for minors isn't a real competition. The higher-ups won't pay too much attention to your achievements. However, your performance in it made people's eyes light up. Qin Feng frowned and asked, What do you mean? You stole my sister's things, and you forgot so quickly? Ouyang she raised her eyebrows. She complained, You're underestimating the city lord's mansion's tolerance. With your strength, what's wrong with that? Ouyang she shook her head and didn't keep him in suspense. Everything you experienced inside will be reflected on the crystal ball. Of course, this is the city lord's mansion's secret, outsiders don't know. That's why we know everything you experienced inside. So you're saying that you've taken a fancy to my potential? You want to take me into the city lord's mansion? Qin Feng said. Ouyang she smiled and didn't say anything. After a while she asked, You're so young, yet you're fighting so hard. Why did you join the battle between adults? To protect the Qin family. Qin Feng said. Just to protect the Qin family? Hee, your vision is too narrow. Ouyang she shook her head and said, Qin Feng, your vision shouldn't be so narrow. Qin Feng frowned, not understanding what Ouyang she meant. A slave of the same surname is nothing more than a drop of water in the vast ocean. The whole world is a slave, it's just a change from a small cage to a big cage. Who is better than who? Ouyang Shi's tone was filled with self-mockery. The more Qin Feng listened, the more confused he became. However, he could tell that there was a hidden meaning in her word. To be honest, your performance in the selection competition made Father think highly of you. Your participation in the Surface's top 10 competition made Father very disappointed and regretful. However, because of this, he had high expectations for you. Are you looking forward to it? Qin Feng was puzzled. He was obviously disappointed in him, so where did his expectations come from? Knowing that Qin Feng was puzzled, Ouyang she did not explain. She gently smiled and said, "The top 10 tournament on the surface is different from the qualifiers. Life and death are not important. If you can walk out of there alive, you might be qualified to know some secrets. Right now, you're just one of the candidates with the hope of becoming such a person. Before you become one, there are many things that you don't have the right to know. Prepare well for the surface's top 10 competition in 3 days. If you can really protect the Qin family as you said, then the person standing in front of you will not be me, but my father." Qin Feng finally understood a little. The general idea was that his current performance had attracted the attention of the city lord's mansion. However, whether he could enter their eyes would depend on his performance in the surface's top 10 competition. As for what candidate, he didn't understand. However, he wouldn't ask. He understood the principle that people know what things are like. However, he wasn't here to listen to Ouyang Shi's lecture, so he said, "You have already announced to the public that I have a gold card, if—" But before he could finish his words, a golden card appeared in front of him. Qin Feng raised his head and looked at Ouyang Shi in shock. "I've already prepared it for you." Ouyang Shi smiled and said, "However, this is only temporary. Whether you can have it for a long time will depend on your performance in the top 10 competition. It seems that the identity of the candidate is not ordinary." Qin Feng smiled and didn't take the gold card. Ouyang Shi smiled but didn't say anything. Qin Feng helplessly took the gold card. It was too difficult to get information from her. "I will use my strength to prove it. I will know what I should know sooner or later." Qin Feng stood up and left. After returning to his family, Qin Feng took out the high-level battle technique that the city lord's mansion had rewarded him with. This was a set of combination punches that contained 3 tyrant fists. Each punch was stronger than the previous one. It was a battle record that was very suitable for actual combat. After secretly memorizing the mantra and some special circulation directions of spiritual energy, Qin Feng came to a spacious place and began to practice. At first, it was a little difficult, but under the guidance of the demon eye, he soon got on the right track. In the quiet courtyard, Qin Feng executed the 3 tyrants of the Fist Emperor. He punched out with his fist, causing spiritual energy to surge and energy to surge. Before the fist arrived, the air started to ripple slightly, and the tip of the fist was filled with a domineering aura. Boom! 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 Qin Feng punched out 3 times. The first punch whistled and the force was fierce. The second punch tore the air and made a sonic boom. And the third punch, the air was compressed into a concave arc, as if there was an air glove on the fist. The King of Fists' 3 tyrants. Each punch is stronger than the previous one. Qin Feng was very satisfied. A high-level battle technique was mastered in such a short time. If other people knew about this, their jaws would drop. Although it was because of the guidance of the demon eye, Qin Feng's talent couldn't be denied. Without the suppression of the demon eye, his talents in all aspects were being unearthed bit by bit. The waning moon slash and the King of Fists' 3 tyrants are my strongest moves, but they are all for close combat. The body-changing steps is a movement technique, but now I have a mid-range attack. Qin Feng thought to himself. His success in the qualifiers didn't make him conceited, because he knew that the real battle had yet to begin. The surface's top 10 tournament wasn't as simple as the qualifiers. It was a battle between adults, and it would be even more brutal. His current strength didn't seem to be enough to compete with Cloudy Days. Although he had all his moves and could fight with a 9 Meridian expert, Cloudy Days wasn't an ordinary 9 Meridian expert. As a member of one of the 3 strongest clans and the #1 genius of his clan, his 9 Meridian was much more powerful than ordinary 9 Meridian expert. If he wanted to fight against him, he had too few moves. Moreover, with the Een family's foundation, the high-level battle techniques that Cloudy Days had mastered couldn't be counted with 2 hands. Old Mo, do you have any powerful moves? Qin Feng asked. The Qin family's foundation naturally couldn't compare to the Een family's, so Qin Feng didn't even consider it. He could only turn his attention to the demon eye. He had to make sufficient preparations. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to compete with Cloudy Days. You're really straightforward. The demon eye laughed. We share honor and disgrace. Qin Feng didn't say much, because the demon eye also knew this principle. Kid, I know better than you how to cultivate. Don't bite off more than you can chew. The demon eye said, although I admit that you are more talented than others in cultivating battle techniques. Qin Feng shrugged and didn't comment. Chapter 23. Spirit Master. Hearing this, Qin Feng's spirit shook. Earth Emperor's / just hearing this name made him feel an endless amount of power. But with your current strength, you still can't touch this level of killing technique. The demon eye's words made Qin Feng's heart turn cold. Why the hell are you telling me that you can't cultivate? Are you trying to make me anxious? Qin Feng was so angry that his teeth itched. He knew that it wouldn't be easy to get benefits from this old thing, so he didn't want to think about it. Returning to his bed, he began to cultivate. Actually, there's another path that you can try, the demon eye suddenly said. What path? Qin Feng lacked interest. The path of cultivation isn't just limited to spiritual energy. After a moment of silence, the demon eye said, Do you know about spirit masters? Qin Feng's eyes narrowed, and he pretended to shake his head casually. Spirit masters control spiritual energy. They can control the heavens, the earth, people, and themselves. It's a very scary and mysterious profession. But spirit masters cultivate spiritual energy. This is innate. Whether or not one can become a spirit master is determined at birth. In the primordial lands, other than the cultivation of spirit power, there was another cultivation method for spirit alchemists, and that was the cultivation of spirit power. However, it was too difficult to control spiritual energy. Only those with talent in this area could become a spirit master. In the city of Sin, spiritual energy cultivators made up less than 10% of the population, and this was only the beginning stages of spiritual energy cultivation. The city of Sin didn't have a true spirit master. Hee, you know quite a lot. The demon eye laughed, then suddenly changed the topic. But spirit masters can also be acquired. Impossible. Qin Feng stared blankly for a moment before shaking his head and saying, Everyone's mental door is always closed. Only an extremely small number of people have their mental door open when they are born. Only such people can control their mental strength and become a mental strength master. That's right. Only those who can open their spiritual door can become a spirit master. But not all spiritual doors are innate. There are also those who open them. You can help me open the mental door. Qin Feng's eyes burned with passion, and even his breathing became hurried. Focus your mind and enter a deep state of meditation and enlightenment. If you can enter that strange state, condense your own spiritual body, enter your mind, and defeat the guardian of the spiritual door, you will be able to open your own spiritual door. From there, you will be able to control your spiritual power as you wish and become a spiritual master, the demon eye said. This is the scripture of reflection. Reciting it will help you in your meditation and comprehension. Whether or not you succeed depends on yourself. A large amount of information was transmitted into Qin Feng's mind, causing him to feel dizzy. The dense and complicated and profound scriptures gave him a headache. This was too difficult to pronounce. Silently reciting the sutra, Qin Feng gradually immersed himself in it. He focused his mind and focused on reciting the sutra. Slowly, he could no longer feel his own existence. His entire being was immersed in the sutra, as though he had become a part of it. He was conscious, but he felt that he no longer existed. He had turned into words and formed a part of the scripture. Gradually, his condition also deteriorated. His consciousness began to blur and he fell into darkness. However, just as he was about to fall into darkness, he suddenly woke up. "Old thing, you harmed me?" Qin Feng was furious. He desperately focused his mind, trying to escape from the sutra. His mind became more and more focused. Just as he reached his limit, with a bang, he disappeared from the sutra and appeared in a white world. "Where is this?" Qin Feng muttered. The confusion in his eyes lasted for a while before it was suddenly replaced by ecstasy. He knew that this was his mind. In the void there was a door of light floating. Intuition told him that it was his spiritual door. Buzz. Beside the spiritual door, a snow-white figure appeared. It looked exactly like him. As soon as it appeared, it attacked him. Bang! Qin Feng was blown up. He was surprised. Could it be that he had failed? Under extreme reluctance, he found that he had condensed his body again. "I understand. This is my mind. Everything is controlled by me." Realizing this, Qin Feng laughed and rushed toward the spiritual body. Bang bang bang, Qin Feng was blown up again and again and again. His eyes became brighter and brighter. At first, he was extremely weak and was like a ball of air that would explode with a touch. Now, he felt that it was somewhat real. He had a real touch and power in his body. He could fight the spiritual body. He didn't know when, but he was pleasantly surprised to find that he could fight the spiritual body. Moreover, the more he fought, the fiercer he became. In the end, he completely suppressed the spiritual body. "Humph, you think you can make decisions in my mind?" Finally, he blew up the spiritual body with a punch and defeated the guardian of the spiritual door. At the same time, his body trembled. He felt an inexplicable surge of power. Bang! The spiritual door shattered. An extremely large amount of spiritual power burst out like a flood. It surged out of the spiritual door and drowned him. Qin Feng abruptly opened his eyes. His eyes were almost bursting with light. His originally calm mind was now like a huge wave that surged to the heavens, rippling wave after wave. A mysterious and frightening power was gradually released. A sense of excitement that almost made him lose all his strength spread to his limbs and bones. This caused him to collapse on the bed. After resting for a while, he sat up and looked at the teacup on the table. He controlled the spiritual power that filled his mind. He separated a strand and swept it out of his body. Then, he rolled up the teacup and threw it. Bang! The teacup hit the door frame and broke into pieces. Qin Feng's eyes widened. A sense of happiness spontaneously arose. "Old devil, I can now be considered a spiritual master," he excitedly said. "You've only just started. You've just started to use spiritual power. When you can transform your spiritual power, you can be considered a beginner spiritual master." The old devil said. After being poured cold water on, Qin Feng curled his lip. He naturally knew about the ranks of spiritual masters. He just forgot in a moment of happiness. Spiritual masters were divided into rank. He only knew that there were beginner and earth rank. As for the ranks after that, he didn't know anything about them. Beginner spiritual master was the first step to becoming a spiritual master. To reach this step, one must first be able to control their spiritual power. This was the most basic requirement. Qin Feng could only roughly control his spiritual power. He still couldn't reach that step. However, He believed that as long as he practiced, he would be able to quickly become a spiritual master. A spiritual master was a noble, sacred, and enviable profession, and a spiritual master was a mysterious, frightening profession. In terms of danger, a spiritual master was the most dangerous. No one wouldn't be afraid. This was because spiritual power, other than its owner, could not be sensed by others. It was invisible and formless. It was the best weapon to kill without a trace. Qin Feng played with the spiritual power in his mind. He separated it into strands and continuously expanded them. He practiced, hoping that he could master it in the shortest amount of time. In the room, Qin Feng sat motionless on the bed. However, it was as if there was a wind blowing in the room. The table and chair shook, flipped over, and then lifted up. The door opened and closed. In his palm, the demonic eye slowly opened. There was a trace of amazement in its eyes. It silently sighed, as expected of a member of that clan. Truly a natural spiritual master. I'm really curious. When you sealed his various outstanding abilities and part of his memories, was it because you didn't want him to be involved in the disputes of that place and become an ordinary person? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.